Chapter 505. After several discussions, Song Qing-shu finally decided that Situ Bulei's troops, Shui Jian's troops, and Yang Yaozhen's Redcoat army would lie in ambush at the Foxhill. Situ Bulei's Wangwu Pai people were mostly from the Guaning Iron Cavalry that had shaken the world in the past. Shui Jian, as the former Ming Dynasty's Zongbing army, was also skilled in training soldiers. Therefore, the two of them were the only remaining elites of the 12 Golden Snake battalions. Needless to say, the Redcoat army had been regarded as a serious threat by the Jin for many years. This time, the 300 men brought by Yang Yaozhen were the elites of the Redcoat army. This night attack was of great importance. First, they had to hide their tracks, and second, they had to fight bravely. The quality of the soldiers was more important than the quantity. Therefore, Song Qing-shu did not add some motley crew. Song Qing-shu gave the command of these 3 troops to Yang Yaozhen. Situ Bulei and Shui Jian did not have much of an opinion. After all, the fourth lady of the Redcoat army had a great reputation for many years. Her prestige was not below that of Yuan Qingji in the past. On the contrary, Yang Yaozhen's expression was somewhat complicated. She looked at Song Qing-shu and asked in a joking tone, "You have given me the most elite troops of the Golden Snake Battalion. Are you not afraid that I will deliberately bury them in this battle?" Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. Although Song Mao and the Fourth Lady have not known each other for long, I can understand a thing or two about the Fourth Lady's character. The Fourth Lady is a rare heroine among women. Her spirit is like a tiger that swallows 10,000 li. How could she do such a petty thing? It's useless for you to flatter me. Haven't you heard that women are the most petty? Although Yang Yaozhen said that she did not care, her slightly raised eyebrows showed that she was very happy with this flattery. Song Qing-shu smiled without saying anything. Then he began to arrange the rest of the people's tasks. The disciples of the Mu Palace, Tian Di Hui, a Mei faction, Green Bamboo Gang, Xia Qingqing tribe, and other sects were arranged at various mountain passes along the way. As soon as they saw the terrain on the sand table, they could not help but exclaim in surprise. "Brother Song, these places are outside the Eagle Ravine." Mu Jianxing could not help but wonder. He remembered that Song Qing-shu had said that the Eagle Ravine was the only way for the Tatars to disperse. Chu Honglu had led his men to ambush there. Do you really think that Chu Honglu has the ability to stop the Tatars' routed army? Song Qing-shu asked in reply. Everyone in the hall shuddered. Even if the night attack was successful, the other side still had 30,000 people. Their night attack might seem powerful, but they had limited manpower. The damage they could do to the Tatar soldiers was naturally limited. Even if the Tatar soldiers fled, there would still be tens of thousands of them. Although Chu Honglu was waiting for them to tire themselves out, he would definitely not be able to stop them. Thinking of how Song Qing-shu had induced Chu Honglu to make a military pledge, many people had already observed a moment of silence for Chu Honglu in advance. Now, the key was to see if Song Qing-shu could successfully defeat the two Hai tribe and make them flee. "Song Qing-shu, what are we going to do?" Lighting could not help but ask when he saw that everyone had more or less received their tasks. Song Qing-shu's face turned serious. "The next step is the most important one. For the night attack to succeed, we must have masters to create chaos in the Qing camp." There were quite a few Walin masters in the hall. These people might not necessarily be more useful than well-trained soldiers in going to battle to kill the enemy, but imitating the special forces system popular in various countries in his previous life, Song Qing-shu decided to organize these people and mix them into the Qing army's main camp. They would make full use of their martial arts skills, and as soon as they touched the ground, they would immediately leave. They would not confront the enemy head-on. They would create chaos everywhere in the main camp, giving the troops outside an opportunity to launch a night attack. Because of the potential danger, although many people were willing to infiltrate the Qing camp with Song Qing-shu, Song Qing-shu still selected those who were not good at martial arts. The final list of members was as follows: Song Qing-shu, Huang Rong, Ajio, Zhang Songxi, Lighting, Xiao Feng, Yalu Nanxian, Yalu Qi, and the others. Although there were not many of them, they were all first-class masters in Jianghu. Their main task was to fan the flames and create chaos everywhere. As long as they were not surrounded, it should not be too difficult to escape. After discussing some details, Yang Miaojin, Situ Boulay, and Shui Jian led the troops to Fox Hill to set up an ambush. The disciples of Mu Palace, Tian Di Hui, and other sects also set off in advance to set up an ambush dozens of miles away. Before leaving, Xia Qingqing took a deep look at Song Qingshu. After all, the relationship between the two of them could not be seen in public. She was also too embarrassed to say too much to Song Qingshu. She could only communicate with her eyes and repeatedly tell him to take care. Zhou Zhiruo did not have so many misgivings. After all, she was Song Qingshu's real wife. Before leaving with the Amei sect, she secretly pulled Song Qingshu to one side and said, "Qingshu, you must promise me. If it is impossible, remember to save your own life. Fighting for hegemony over the world is just a fleeting cloud. I only want you. When the time comes, we can go back to Amei together and live happily for the rest of our lives." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly in his heart. If it really came to that, could it be that he would also bring other women to Amei? Wouldn't you explode in anger? However, Song Qingshu was also very touched. After all, although Zhou Zhuo looked weak on the outside, in her bones, she was the kind of strong woman who wholeheartedly worked for her career. For her to say such words, it proved that she really cared about him to the bones. "All right, I promise you," Song Qingshu said with a stern expression. "But Zhiruo, you must be careful this time. Remember what I told you, don't chase a cornered enemy. Your main task this time is to plant flags all over the mountains and plains to put up a show of strength. You must use more traps, rocks, wood, and concealed weapons, and try to avoid direct confrontation with the Tatars." Zhou Zhiruo nodded and said, "Okay, then I'm leaving." After all the people left, only Song Qingshu and the experts who were chosen to sneak into the Qing camp were left in the hall. Xiao Feng, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "Brother Song, please forgive me for speaking bluntly. Even if we can successfully make the Qing camp explode, it seems that your subsequent plans will not be able to hurt the Qing army to the bone. Chu Honglu can't stop the routed soldiers. Even if Tian Di Hui, Mu Palace, and other sects join in, I'm afraid they won't be able to stop them." Huang Rong also nodded in agreement and said, "I see from young master's arrangement that the main purpose of Tian Di Hui, Mu Palace, and the others doesn't seem to be to take the opportunity to destroy the Tatars' routed soldiers, but more to mislead them. Could it be that young master has a follow-up plan?" Before Song Qingshu could answer, Huang Rong shook her head again and said, "Now that all the troops that can be used have been used, even if there is a follow-up plan, there are no soldiers that can be used." Yin Lighting was startled when he heard this. "From what the two of you mean, you want to take the opportunity to wipe out the Qing army in one fell swoop. But didn't you say that Golden Snake Battalion can take the opportunity to escape into the forest after a victory to preserve their strength?" Huang Rong said softly, "Heroine Liuxia, there is something you don't know. Although Prince Song's plan sounds a bit whimsical, if you think about it carefully, there's a possibility of success. And once it succeeds, it will be a great victory that will shock the world. But if we can't take the opportunity to wipe out Tu Hai's tribe, I always feel that it will be a pity." Xiao Feng nodded in deep agreement. Previously, he was satisfied with a small victory. But after Song Qingshu's analysis, he, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, keenly realized that it was possible to wipe out Tu Hai's tribe. Unfortunately, he had no troops at hand and really did not have the strength to take down those routed soldiers in one fell swoop. Chapter 506. Celestial Soldiers and Generals? The group of people was stunned. Song Qingshu asked, "Do you know how Han Xian dealt with Xiang Yu's general, Long Qi?" Most of the people in the hall looked at each other, and even Xiao Feng frowned. Obviously, he did not know this story. Only Huang Rong's eyes lit up. She had already understood Song Qingshu's plan. Song Qingshu could not help but silently criticize. It seemed that the level of compulsory education in ancient times was really worrying. Is Gongzi planning to attack with water? Huang Rong asked in surprise. Madam is indeed a female Zhuge. Song Qingshu nodded with a smile and pointed to a place on the sand table. Baishui River is the burial place of the Tatar soldiers. Looking at Song Qingshu's confident look, Zhu Yaoyao's eyes lit up. In the hall, she was probably the one who understood Song Qingshu's plan the best. During the Golden Snake Convention, Song Qingshu had arranged for her and Xia Qingqing to secretly take people to the upper reaches of Baishui River to build a barricade. At that time, she was particularly puzzled and worried that his hard work would end up benefiting others. But Song Qingshu told her with certainty that he would definitely win the championship in the Golden Snake Convention. At that time, there were many peerless experts. Qing, Shi Patian, Su Zhu, Yang Yaozhen, Yang Gua, and the others were all on par with him. In particular, Qing's battle prowess far exceeded Song Qingshu's. As Song Qingshu's woman, Zhu Yaoyao could only choose to unconditionally believe that he could win and become the Golden Snake King, but she was actually quite doubtful. When Song Qingshu defeated Qing, Zhu Yaoyao was so excited that she almost cried. Because of this, her trust in Song Qingshu had reached an almost blind level. Although most of the people in the Golden Snake camp thought that they would be grateful if they could win a small victory, Zhu Yaoyao believed from the beginning that this would be a great victory that would shock the world. After Song Qingshu's simple explanation, the others in the hall finally understood, and their morale was greatly boosted. Tu Hai's 30,000 soldiers are finished. Xiao Feng suddenly stood up. As a veteran general on the battlefield, he was naturally able to determine that the probability of Song Qingshu's plan succeeding this time was already extremely high. At this time, he was also very shocked. This Song Qingshu was not famous before, and he only came to prominence in the past 2 years. He did not expect that apart from martial arts, he was also so talented in war. Could it be that he was one of those legendary famous generals? Actually, Xiao Feng had overestimated him. This time, Song Qingshu only had the advantage of knowing the information of both sides. If the opponent this time was not the Manchurian army, but some other faction, Song Qingshu would probably have no choice but to pack his bags and flee as far as he could. "Sai, do you still want me to live?" Yalu Qi couldn't help but mutter. As one of the most outstanding young warriors of the great Liao dynasty, he grew up surrounded by all kinds of halos and always thought highly of himself. Until he met Song Qingshu, it was one thing for his martial arts to be higher than his, but now it seemed like he couldn't even keep up with his opponent when it came to marching and fighting. However, Yalu Qi was a modest gentleman after all. He didn't feel any jealousy because of this. Instead, he felt a trace of admiration. Nancian has always had her eyes set on the top of her head. In the past, she once said that her husband must first be better than her in martial arts, and second, be able to strategize from 1,000 li away. Song Qingshu fulfilled both of these requirements. Originally, he was a good candidate, and if Great Liao could get a talent like Song Qingshu, there would be hope for a revival. Unfortunately, Song Qingshu is already married. This thought only flashed past Yalu Qi's mind, but he didn't think too much about it. After all, no matter how poor Great Liao was, with Yalu Nanshian's status as a princess, how could she be a concubine? As for Yalu Nanshian herself, she was hugging her sword and leaning against a pillar, quietly watching Song Qingshu's figure. No one knew what she was thinking. Zhang Songshi and Yin Lighting looked at each other, both seeing the gratification and pride in each other's eyes. All these years, because of Song Qingshu's matter, eldest senior brother not only took the blame and resigned from his position as the sect leader, but he had also been in closed-door training. If he knew that Song Qingshu had turned over a new leaf and was still so capable, he would definitely be very happy. Huang Rong's expression was even more complicated. Song Qingshu had given her too many surprises. This time, she only attended the Golden Snake gathering with the intention of defending against the foreign tribes. She wanted to do her best, but who knew that Song Qingshu would appear out of nowhere? If he had helped, how could the war in Xiangyang be so disadvantageous? Huang Rong suddenly had a bold idea. How about marrying Fu to him? Before, Huang Rong had thought about marrying Guo Fu to the young master of the Liu family, the governor of Xiangyang. Now that Jia Shidao was in power in the Southern Song dynasty, and the Liu brothers were Jia Shidao's right-hand men, the Liu family could be said to be one of the largest military groups in the Southern Song dynasty. If Guo Fu married into the Liu family, it wouldn't be a bad thing for her. However, Huang Rong underestimated the tradition of the Southern Song dynasty. Deep in their bones, the emphasis on civil and military made the generals naturally lower than the civil officials. Although the Liu family was powerful, they were military officials after all, and their position in the court had always been a bit awkward. Therefore, the Liu family had always tried to marry the daughter of a civil official in the court, taking the opportunity to increase their political power. How could they like the daughter of a Jianghu hero, even though this hero could be said to be famous in the martial arts world? Although the Liu family didn't say it explicitly, Huang Rong was smart enough to figure out the real intention of the Liu family from their words and some clues. Suddenly, she was furious. If it wasn't for the great cause of fighting against the Mongols, she wouldn't have thought about marrying her daughter to a playboy. Although Huang Rong was a little selfish, she was also an extremely proud person. Since the Liu family didn't show any sincerity, she naturally wouldn't send her daughter to them. At this time, seeing that Song Qingshu was both civil and military, Huang Rong subconsciously thought of Guo Fu's marriage. Now the biggest problem is that he's already married. It wasn't that Huang Rong didn't think about letting Guo Fu and Zhou Zhuo serve the same husband, but thinking about Zhou Zhuo gave her a headache. Zhou Zhuo was the dignified head of the Yimei Empire, and her status in the martial arts world wasn't much lower than Huang Rong and Zhou Zhuo. How could Guo Fu take her position as the first wife? But if Guo Fu was to be the second wife, Huang Rong would definitely not be willing. Huang Rong suddenly remembered how Zhou Zhuo had rescued her from the cave that night and couldn't help blushing. If Zhou Zhuo had seen her like that, she wouldn't be able to help Fu even if she wanted to. Moreover, what Song Qingshu had done to her that night. How could she still have the face to be his mother-in-law? Since everyone has a general understanding of the operation, please go back and rest. There's a fierce battle tonight. Song Qingshu's voice immediately woke Huang Rong up. If something happens to Xiangyang in the future, based on Brother Jing's character, he will definitely die for his country. Naturally, I will be with him. When that time comes, Fu will be alone, and it will be difficult for her to survive in this chaotic world. Chapter 507. After discussing all kinds of details, it was already dawn. Song Qingshu asked everyone to go back and have a good rest. 12 hours later, we will gather in the hall and set off together. Brother Song, as the saying goes, the emperor will lose his subjects if he doesn't keep secrets. I don't think you should tell them the plan in advance. Zhu Yui was naturally by Song Qingshu's side. Seeing that most of the people had left, she couldn't help but say this worriedly. It can't be helped. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. They are all leaders. It will be difficult to convince them if I don't reveal something. After all, they have to take risks at night. Seeing that Zhu Yui was still worried, Song Qingshu reached out and held her little hand. Ajio, don't worry too much. The people in this hall are trustworthy. First, I believe in their characters. Second, they have no reason to leak the secret. After all, the failure of the Manchurian Qing is in everyone's interest. Song Qingshu was not a single-celled organism like Song Xianggong. Naturally, he knew that only when both sides had the same interest could there be a basis for trust. The two of them held hands and chatted along the way. Soon, they returned to their courtyard. Zhu Yui suddenly said curiously, "By the way, Brother Song, I didn't have time to ask you just now. How did you win against Ah Qing? What do you think?" Hearing Ah Jio's question, Song Qingshu's expression suddenly became a little strange. He looked at her with a faint smile. "I just don't know. That's why I asked you." Zhu Yui pouted and couldn't help but act coquettishly. "If I just say it, it will probably be difficult for you to understand. Why don't you imitate Ah Qing and recreate the situation at that time? I'll let you experience it yourself. I think the effect will be better." Song Qing-shu said seriously. Zhu Yui always felt that his eyes were flickering with evil intentions, but in the end, she couldn't hide her curiosity and subconsciously nodded in agreement. Okay, I remember that Ah Ching was quite normal at that time until he got close to you. Zhu Yui held the short sword and gestured while recalling the situation at that time. Is that so, huh? When the tip of Zhu Yui's sword was a few inches away from Song Qing-shu, she suddenly felt as if all the strength in her body had been drained. Traces of heat surged out of her body, making her extremely weak, as if she could feel it. Feeling her own hot skin, Zhu Yui was slightly startled before she reacted. She couldn't help but exclaim, "The fragrance of joy." The two of them had long been intimate, so Zhu Meng naturally knew that it was a byproduct of Song Qing-shu's practice of the blissful dhyana, which was sometimes used by Song Qing-shu for pleasure in the bedroom. That kind of feeling was very, very pleasant, but Zhu Yuihan subconsciously didn't like it because she always felt as if she had been drugged by the most powerful aphrodisiac, waiting for the man to pamper her on the bed. Whether it was her body or her mind, she couldn't resist at all. What Zhu Xuanyi liked was the natural intimacy, not the one-sided indecency, although it seemed more attractive than the usual intimacy. Song Qing-shu carried Zhu Yui, whose body had already turned into a ball of cotton, and looked down at the beauty in his arms. He couldn't help but smile evilly. "My dear ninth princess, you offered to experience it yourself. You bastard. You deliberately set a trap for me." Song Qing-shu smiled proudly and sat on the couch with her in his arms. Before Zhu Yui could answer, he leaned over and kissed her slightly parted red lips. A moan that could make one's bones tingle resounded in the room. Huang Rong had been thinking about the problem of matchmaking her daughter with Song Qing-shu. But when she thought that Song Qing-shu already had a family and seemed to have already promised to marry the ninth princess, Huang Rong felt a little upset. Therefore, not long after they returned to the courtyard, Huang Rong couldn't help but look for Song Qing-shu. She planned to chat with Song Qing-shu first and find out what he wanted to say before making a decision. But when she arrived at the gate of the courtyard, before Huang Rong had time to knock on the door, she vaguely heard the sound of a woman crying. Huang Rong's heart suddenly skipped a beat. As an experienced person, how could she not know what the person inside was doing? This ninth princess usually looks cold. I didn't expect her voice to be so seductive. Huang Rong secretly spat. The voice made her feel a little hot, and she immediately turned around to leave. "Brother Song, you are so bad to use such a dirty way to deal with." "Sister Ah Ching." There was the sound of Zhu Ao's giggling. Huang Rong couldn't help but be startled and subconsciously stopped. In the entire Golden Snake meeting, the most curious thing was how Song Qing-shu turned defeat into victory and overturned Ah Ching in the end. But this probably involved the secrets of other people's trump cards, so the group of people wouldn't be untactful and ask Song Qing-shu. But the more it was like this, the more mysterious the whole thing seemed. Maybe I can find out the reason by listening to their conversation. Huang Rong couldn't resist the curiosity in her heart. She leaned close to the door and pricked up her ears to listen. Unfortunately, Huang Rong was standing at the gate of the courtyard, more than 10 meters away from the house. Huang Rong really couldn't hear the whispers between the two clearly. Huang Rong showed a trace of struggle on her face. Finally, as if she had made a great decision, she held her breath and tiptoed to the house. "I just want to listen a little. I will leave immediately after I hear the reason." Huang Rong kept comforting herself. Huang Rong was worried that Song Qing-shu might notice, but her qigong had always been good. In her opinion, in this kind of situation, men would naturally be less vigilant, so she still held her breath and stood at the door. After listening for a while, Huang Rong's face was so red that it was about to drip water. She couldn't help but feel regret in her heart, because the two people in the house didn't mention the previous fight with Ah Ching except for the sentence, "just now." The voices coming from the house were all whispers between lovers. The content was so bold that even Huang Rong, who was a mother, couldn't bear it. Song Qing-shu, that night, Madame Wu's face was full of satisfaction. Every inch of her skin revealed the bright red of a rose after the bliss. Did you really? Huang Rong had just taken a step when she heard Zhu Yaowei talking about her. She couldn't help but look very strange. She was in a dilemma. On one hand, she felt it was too shameful and wanted to leave as soon as possible. On the other hand, she wanted to hear how Song Qingshu would answer. So, do you want me to do something with her or nothing? Then Song Qingshu's hateful voice sounded. Huang Rong's chest slightly rose and fell a few times. Finally, she decided to stay and listen to what was going on. It depends on whether Song Qingshu has the intention or not. If Song Qingshu wants her, you can invite her in now and get what you want. Zhu Yaowei's voice made Huang Rong's face change greatly. Chapter 508. Huang Rong wanted to run away after hearing the conversation inside, but the door beside her suddenly opened. Song Qingshu stood at the door and looked at her with a faint smile. Madame Gua, did you come to find me at this time to have a deep conversation with me? Huang Rong's face reddened. She glanced at Song Qingshu and realized that he was half naked. She hurriedly averted her gaze. I just thought a question. I wanted to ask young master about it, but it seems that it's inconvenient now. Let's talk next time. Let's talk next time. As soon as she finished speaking, Huang Rong turned and ran out in a panic. It's so embarrassing to be discovered by him, but he looks gentle and weak. I didn't expect his satin flesh to be so strong. He's quite masculine. Huang Rong, what are you thinking? At this time, Huang Rong's mind was in a mess. All kinds of chaotic thoughts came one after another. Just as she was letting her imagination run wild, she suddenly felt her body stop. She looked back and saw Song Qingshu reaching out to grab her shoulder. Madame Gua has always been sharp. This battle is too important. If Madame really finds something wrong, then we must remedy it as soon as possible. Madam, please come in. Song Qingshu looked anxious. He stepped aside and made an inviting gesture. Huang Rong hesitated for a moment. Song Qingshu and Princess Jiao were clearly intimate inside. He didn't even have time to put on his clothes. The ninth princess must also be naked. It was really inconvenient for her to go in at this time. But who asked her to talk nonsense just now? There was no reason to refuse. Huang Rong was in a dilemma. Her body was involuntarily pulled in by Song Qingshu. Clang! Hearing the sound of the door closing, Huang Rong's heart skipped a beat. She asked subconsciously, "Why did you close the door?" Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and shrugged. He pointed to the bed not far away. It's really inconvenient for outsiders to see us like this. Moreover, it will damage Madame's reputation. Huang Rong followed his gaze and saw that a Jiao was lazily lying on the bed, his black hair messily scattered on the bed. He had casually pulled a brocade blanket over his body, revealing his snow-white shoulders and two well-proportioned and slender thighs. His usually incomparably fair face was currently incomparably flushed, and his starry eyes were half closed. Clearly, he was reminiscing the aftertaste of what had just happened. Huang Rong was a mature woman. How could she not understand Ajio's current situation? She only felt that her legs were suddenly a little weak, and her heart was beating even faster. She quickly pretended to be calm and looked away. She found a chair and sat down. Actually, it's not a big deal. I just want to ask young master how you plan to assassinate Tuhai tonight. After all, whether or not you can assassinate Tuhai will determine the success or failure of the whole thing. Huang Rong was indeed quick-witted. In a flash, she thought of a very reasonable question. She wasn't in the mood to listen to Song Qingshu's answer. She didn't know what was wrong with her body. Waves of heat spread from the deepest part of her body to the rest of her body. She knew that she couldn't stay any longer. All she could think about was how to leave this place. After casually responding to him with a few words, Huang Rong got up and said goodbye. Unexpectedly, she had only taken a few steps when a strong force came from behind, and she suddenly fell backward. "What are you doing?" Feeling Song Qingshu's strong, manly aura, Huang Rong struggled to get out of his arms. "Doesn't Madame want to know how I will assassinate Tuhai?" Huang Rong looked up and found that Song Qingshu's smile was a little strange. "No, I don't want to know," Huang Rong said in a panic. "How can this be? Whether the assassination will be successful or not depends on Madame's help." Song Qingshu's smile became even more strange. How can I help? Huang Rong was stunned, and her heart was suddenly filled with curiosity. At that moment, she even forgot that she was in Song Qingshu's arms. Previously, by chance, I learned the art of disguise. I can disguise myself as others as I want. This time, I plan to disguise myself as one of Tu Hai's bodyguards and secretly get close to him. Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Huang Rong's eyes became brighter and brighter. If the art of disguise is really so magical, it will indeed be much easier to assassinate Tu Hai. Unfortunately, there's a problem now. Song Qingshu deliberately stopped talking. What problem? Huang Rong asked hurriedly. The main problem is that I haven't used the art of disguise since I learned it. I don't know if people familiar with me will see through me, so I want to ask Madam for help. Song Qingshu suddenly looked hesitant. But this help will put Madam in a difficult position. If I can expel the Tartars and restore the Han people's country, it is worth it even if I have to break my bones. Moreover, it is just a difficult position. Prince Song, there is no harm. As long as I can do it, I will not refuse. Huang Rong smiled sweetly. As intelligent as she was, she naturally understood that Song Qingshu wouldn't really ask her to do anything that would tear her body to pieces. It was just a difficult matter, and with her intelligence, she naturally had a way to solve it. This one thanks Madam on behalf of the millions of Han people in the world. Song Qingshu immediately became serious. He gently let go of her and bowed respectfully to her. Huang Rong was startled by his solemn appearance and suddenly had a bad feeling. She couldn't help but ask tentatively, "What does Gongzi want me to do?" Although the art of disguise can change one's appearance to be exactly the same as others, the biggest problem is that I don't know if it can fool the person closest to me. Song Qingshu paused and continued. Although I can change my appearance to be exactly the same as one of Tu Hai's bodyguards, I am not sure if I can fool Tu Hai. So I need to do an experiment in advance. What experiment? The bad feeling in Huang Rong's heart grew stronger. Song Qingshu looked at Huang Rong's mature and graceful body and showed a trace of a strange smile. The most intimate relationship is with the person who sleeps next to me. If my art of disguise can fool even the person who sleeps next to me, then I can naturally fool Tu Hai. The person who sleeps next to you. Huang Rong's expression changed several times. At this point, she had vaguely guessed what Song Qingshu's so-called help was. Rong, while Huang Rong's mind was in a mess, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. She looked up and found her brother Jing standing in front of her. "Jing, brother?" Huang Rong called out uncertainly. "I haven't seen you for a long time. I missed you so much." Guo Jing showed a simple and honest smile and held her in his arms. "You are Song Qingshu." Although it was a familiar voice and a familiar face, Huang Rong always felt that something was wrong and asked blankly, "Song Qingshu? Rong, are you too tired these days?" Guo Jing looked at her doubtfully. "Where did Song Qingshu go? He was just here a moment ago." Huang Rong took a deep breath and calmly pushed the brother Jing in front of her away from her body. "Prince Song saw that I came all the way to find you and wanted to help me. He just left with the 9th princess." Chapter 509. What's going on? Huang Rong was dumbfounded. Was I dreaming? Huang Rong was in a trance until she was hugged by Guo Jing again. She then realized that Song Qingshu had mentioned something about disguising himself. In his arms, Huang Rong remained calm and collected. She took the opportunity to touch his face, intending to check if there was a mask on his face. However, just as her fingers were about to touch Guo Jing's, he tilted his head slightly, as if he had foreseen it and dodged it in an extremely ingenious manner. Huang Rong wanted to try again, but her hands were already held by him. "Ronger, you've lost weight these days." Guo Jing held her hands and looked at her affectionately. Huang Rong blushed and gave up trying to test him. She already knew that the Guo Jing in front of her was Song Qingshu in disguise. How could her brother Jing be so sweet-talkative? After hesitating for a moment, Huang Rong did not expose him directly. Instead, she looked at him carefully. So similar, Huang Rong's eyes lit up. If Song Qing-shu hadn't told her that he knew how to disguise himself, she wouldn't have thought too much about it, even if she thought Guijing was a little abnormal. She might have been fooled by him. After the initial shock, Huang Rong quickly sorted out the whole thing. In order to test whether Song Qing-shu's disguise could fool people close to him, he secretly changed into Brother Jing's appearance and moved the ninth princess away when she was not paying attention, creating a kind of confusion in her memory. He wanted to see if she could see through his disguise. But why don't I feel anything when the ninth princess doesn't want to see me? Although Huang Rong knew that her martial arts were far inferior to Song Qing-shu's, it was impossible for him to move the ninth princess away under her eyes. Did I fall for his soul-shifting technique? Huang Rong reacted quickly, and her face turned ugly. This bastard. However, Huang Rong wasn't really angry. She was smart and quickly understood that if Song Qing-shu didn't tell her beforehand, she wouldn't be able to see through his disguise when he used the soul transfer technique and changed his appearance to look like Brother Jing. At that time, if he used the identity of Brother Jing and tried to be intimate with her, she probably wouldn't refuse him. Instead, she would happily cater to him. Tui, what a despicable skill. It's a pity he didn't become a pervert. Huang Rong's face turned red as she thought of some unbearable scenes. Ronger, what are you thinking about now? Guijing's voice sounded again. Huang Rong had wanted to expose Song Qing-shu's trick, but her mischievous heart was suddenly aroused. That would be too boring. She decided to pretend that she didn't see the flaw and wanted to see what Song Qing-shu would do next. It's just that it's a little embarrassing to be in his arms now. Huang Rong was a little hesitant, but then she thought about it. It wasn't like she hadn't been hugged by him in the cave before, and he looked like Brother Jing now, so it didn't seem like a big deal. Rong, why are you daydreaming all of a sudden? Guijing's voice rang in her ears again. Hearing his gentle voice, Huang Rong couldn't help but be startled. It was as if she had returned to the time when she was a young girl, and an inexplicable feeling rose in her heart. She subconsciously answered, Rong is thinking about whether Xiangyang will have any problems without Brother Jing. As she spoke, Huang Rong quietly took a step back and distanced herself from Guijing. After all, she knew that he was Song Qing-shu in disguise. She just wanted to use this opportunity to tease him. How could she let him continue to take advantage of her? Guijing smiled, not minding her actions. Now that the Mongolians and the Song have signed a truce, they won't start fighting again in a short period of time. Rong, you don't have to worry. You're quite good at pretending. Let's see how long you can pretend for. Huang Rong quickly put on a beautiful smile and continued to ask, Then when did you leave Xiangyang, Brother Jing? Guijing paused and obviously hesitated. Rong, I came to find you a few days after you left. I've given myself away. To find Fu, I've been traveling around the Central Plains for a long time. If Brother Jing really left Xiangyang at that time, he should have arrived at the Golden Snake gathering before me. Huang Rong didn't immediately expose him. If she did, it wouldn't be fun. She rolled her eyes and deliberately changed the topic to Song Qing-shu. Brother Jing, this time, Song Qing-shu won the Golden Snake King out of everyone's expectations. What do you think of this young man? Huang Rong purposely emphasized the words, young man, and looked at him maliciously, waiting for his answer. Song Qing-shu. Guijing seemed to be organizing his words. He slowly paced around the room and finally sat down on a couch not far away. He gently patted the spot beside him and gestured for Huang Rong to sit down. This man is handsome, elegant, and elegant. His martial arts are also incredibly high. It's as if he's a genius that only appears once in 100 years in the world of martial arts. Bah, aren't you ashamed of boasting? Huang Rong was secretly surprised. When she noticed his invitation, she couldn't help but hesitate. After all, it was a little dangerous for a man and a woman to sit on the bed together. But she also wanted to use this opportunity to ask Song Qing-shu some questions that were usually inconvenient to ask. After hesitating for a long time, Huang Rong shyly walked over and stopped 3 feet away from the couch. She didn't want to take another step forward. Unexpectedly, Guijing, who was on the couch, reached out and pulled her. Huang Rong felt that he was moving very slowly, but she didn't know why she couldn't avoid him. He took advantage of the situation and pulled her. Huang Rong staggered and sat on his lap. Ronger, why are you so distant with your husband? Guojing's simple and honest smile was so hateful in Huang Rong's eyes. She wanted to struggle to stand up, but she found that her strength was like a clay ox in the sea. It didn't work at all. Fortunately, Song Qingshu only pulled her onto his lap and did not make any further moves. Huang Rong hesitated for a moment and gave up struggling. She took the opportunity to ask, Brother Jing, how do you feel about your martial arts compared to Song Qingshu's? This was a question that had been puzzling Huang Rong since she watched Song Qingshu's performance at the Golden Snake Gathering. In fact, she already had an answer in her heart, but it was always more reliable to ask the person in question. However, this question was full of considerations. Before this, it was not convenient for Huang Rong to ask Song Qingshu directly. Now that he appeared in front of her as Guijing, Huang Rong could pretend that she knew nothing and ask him directly. Chapter 510. Huang Rong's body was already very sensitive after listening to Song Qing's words. Feeling Song Qing's fingers caressing her, Huang Rong's body trembled and her Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Then, Jing Gij, it's better if you touch me a little. Rong, since you think so, of course your brother Jing is better at martial arts. Huang Rong's eyes suddenly widened because she felt Song Qing moving closer to her face. The stubble on his chin made her feel a little painful and a little itchy. What does he want to do? Huang Rong was sure that Song Qing was just joking with her, so she took the opportunity to tease him. She didn't expect that he wanted to make the best of a mistake. No, if I fall out with him at this time, I'll make him angry. With his martial arts, if he really wants to do something to me, I absolutely can't resist. It seems that I can only use tonight's raid to remind him to stop. Huang Rong's mind was working fast, and she quickly analyzed the pros and cons. She had to bear with the other party's wandering hands while thinking about how to organize her words. But Song Qing didn't want to wait for her at all. His lips moved several times to Huang Rong's earlobe, cheek, neck, and other places. Huang Rong secretly complained. If he really kissed her, she didn't need to think so much. She could just tell him the truth. Unfortunately, Song Qing always pecked her lightly, like a dragonfly skimming the water surface. Huang Rong herself wasn't sure whether he actually kissed her or not. As a result, Huang Rong was in a dilemma. If she told him the truth, he didn't seem to have done anything too excessive. If she didn't tell him the truth, should she continue like this? Rong, or why is your face so red? Is it too hot? Guijing looked at her with a smile. This bastard really thinks he's Brother Jing? Huang Rong felt bitter in her heart, but her voice was extraordinarily gentle. Prince Song, stop it. We still have to raid the camp tonight. Madam, can you tell me the truth? Did you see anything wrong just now? Guijing's voice changed. It was Song Qing's voice. Seeing that Song Qing did not continue to pester her, Huang Rong secretly let out a sigh of relief. Prince Song, can you change back to your original appearance? Looking at you like this, I really feel a little. Madam still hasn't answered this one question. Song Qing ignored Huang Rong's request and looked at her with a burning gaze. Huang Rong's face reddened. Young master's disguise technique is truly marvelous. It's hard to see through your appearance. It's only because young master's words and actions are somewhat different from my humble husband's that Song Qing didn't look dejected at all. Instead, he said happily, it's good that I don't have any flaws in my appearance. Anyway, sometimes I don't need to talk. Young master, what do you mean? Huang Rong felt a little unnatural when she heard Song Qing's strange words. For example, in the dead of the night, when Madam is sleeping soundly, I will lie down beside Madam in my current appearance. What happens next doesn't need to be said at all. Song Qing's smile became a little evil. Huang Rong's expression changed. She said coldly, I hope young master can conduct himself with dignity. Song Qing smiled nonchalantly. He stood up and walked to the window. He opened the window slightly and looked at the forest in the distance. He said, actually, I'm very curious. If Ouyang Ke wasn't a pervert, with his qualifications, would Madame have chosen him or Hero Gua? Brother Jing treats people with a pure and innocent heart. Even if I had to do it all over again, I would still choose him. Thinking of Gua Jing's silly appearance, Huang Rong couldn't help but smile. So, even if I were born 20 years earlier, I still wouldn't be able to compete with Hero Gua? Song Qing sighed regretfully. Of course. Huang Rong's beautiful eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. She couldn't help but feel proud and pleased. Fortunately, I don't have the intention of competing with Hero Gua fairly. Song Qing chuckled. Huang Rong felt that there was a hidden meaning in his words. She understood that she shouldn't stay here any longer. She stood up and said goodbye. It's getting late. Tonight's important matter is imminent. I'll go back and rest first. If Madame doesn't mind, you can rest here. Song Qing turned around and looked at her with a smile. Huang Rong was secretly angry. What kind of words were those? Even if she was a virgin, she wouldn't stay overnight in a strange man's bedroom, let alone someone else's wife. There's no need. Huang Rong made up her mind. If he really had bad intentions, she wouldn't be able to escape his clutches with her martial arts skills, but she would still be able to alert others. But if that happened, the prestige that Song Qing had painstakingly built up would be destroyed. Huang Rong suddenly looked hesitant. After all, she had a good impression of Song Qing. He was handsome and skilled in martial arts. Moreover, the two of them had done things that weren't meant to be known to outsiders. I hope you know when to stop, Huang Rong said in her heart. In fact, if it wasn't for the things they had experienced in the cave, and if it was another man, she would have already fallen out with him if he had even the slightest intention of flirting with her. She wouldn't have been able to tolerate him like she was now. Madam, please wait. Song Qing's body flashed, and he was already in front of Huang Rong. The arm that suddenly appeared in front of her almost caused Huang Rong's chest to bump into it. She hurriedly took a step back to create a safe distance. She couldn't help but bite her lips, and with a double meaning, she advised, "Young master has so many beautiful women by his side. Don't ruin your future because of a moment of impulse. Madam, you misunderstand. It's just that I have an experiment that I need your help with." Song Qing smiled slightly. What experiment? Seeing his serious expression, Huang Rong couldn't help but be startled. Song Qing said unhurriedly, "I heard a story before. A princess had skin contact with a strange man in a dark ice cellar. A few days later, she fell in love with this man. Unfortunately, she couldn't see his face, and she didn't know his identity. Later, she used her identity as a princess to publicly search for a husband. Using a secret code that only the two of them knew, she finally found that person. Your story is too absurd. How can there be such a thing in the world?" Huang Rong couldn't help but frown. "Madam, you can treat this as a story. This isn't the main point." Song Qing smiled slightly. "What I'm curious about is what if another man coincidentally learned those secret codes and pretended to be the princess's lover to search for a husband? At first, the princess would definitely think that the other person was her lover, but the key is that when the two of them were intimate, would she find out that the other person was a fake?" Hearing that Song Qing's topic was becoming more and more intimate, Huang Rong blushed. "How would I know?" Chapter 511. Huang Rong's heart skipped a beat, and her breathing quickened. She tried to think of a way to escape as she asked, "How would you like to try? I've already said it like this, and Madame is an extremely intelligent person. How could you not know?" Song Qingshu's hand gently brushed past Huang Rong's hairband. The hairband seemed to be cut by an invisible blade, and her beautiful black hair cascaded down like a waterfall. Song Qingshu's eyes were full of admiration. "I still prefer Madame's current appearance." At this point, Huang Rong could no longer remain calm. Her face turned cold, and she turned to leave. She had always been quick-witted and understood that Song Qingshu dared to say these things to her today, most likely because he already had the intention of going all out. If he did not obtain her today, he would not give up. Thus, she did not dare to politely bid farewell like she did in the past. With the intention of leaving, Huang Rong made a prompt decision. She used her qing gong and rushed to the window on the other side. She did not choose the door closer to her like most people would. She wanted to catch Song Qingshu unprepared, and at the same time cause a bigger commotion. Huang Rong knew that as long as the rest of the people on the mountain were alerted, no matter how impulsive Song Qingshu was, he would calm down. Unfortunately, as soon as Huang Rong rose into the air, she found that the Jinqi in her body became sluggish. All of her internal energy seemed to disappear without a trace. Her whole body softly fell from the sky and was caught by Song Qingshu. "Let go of me." Being hugged by a man other than her husband in such an intimate position, Huang Rong was immediately embarrassed and angry. "We were chatting happily. Why did Madame suddenly want to leave?" Song Qingshu could not help but tease the woman who seemed to be angry and shy. "What did you do to me? Why did my internal energy suddenly disappear?" Huang Rong was too lazy to pay attention to his feigned ignorance and coldly asked, Madame's internal energy disappeared? Could it be that you were poisoned? Then let this one help Madame force the poison out of her body." Song Qingshu had a shocked and concerned look on his face. Without any explanation, he carried her to the bed. Huang Rong was shocked and angry at the same time. However, she had always been a clever girl. Her mind was still working like lightning. Since he said that he wanted to treat his injuries, it proved that he still wanted to save face. He had not made up his mind to fall out with her. Maybe there was still a chance to turn things around. However, no matter how smart Huang Rong was, no matter how fast her mind worked, it was only a few steps from the time she was picked up to the time she was placed on the bed. How could she think of escaping so quickly? And Song Qingshu had already started to take off her body. "Since young master wants to help me expel the poison, why do you need to remove my clothes?" Huang Rong could not help but bite her lips. Now that she was a fish on the chopping block, she could only play along with his words to buy some time. "Madam, you may not know this, but the internal energy that I have learned is very strange. Although it has a miraculous effect in detoxification, it also has a drawback. If the poison that is forced out is blocked by the clothes on the body, it will not be released in time. When the poisonous gas flows back, the poison will take the opportunity to invade the tendons and veins. Even if the almighty immortals were alive, they would not be able to detoxify it." Song Qingshu said seriously as he took off Huang Rong's outer clothes. "This is simply a bunch of nonsense." Huang Rong was furious in her heart, but she did not dare to show it directly. At this time, as long as she could drag it out, she could not help but coldly say, "I am the leader of the beggar clan, and at the same time could be considered to have a long history of learning. Why have I never heard of such a strange martial art in this world?" As Huang Rong gradually revealed the skin on her shoulder, Song Qingshu could not help but smile. "Madam, you must be joking. With your knowledge, how could you not know that there are many internal energy skills in this world that require you to take off your clothes to practice? Let's not talk about other sects, just the ancient tomb sect that you have a deep relationship with. Their most profound internal energy is the Jade Maiden Heart Sutra. Even when practicing, you need to take off your clothes to release heat, not to mention when you use your internal energy to expel the poison." Huang Rong was secretly shocked. I did not expect this little thief to be so knowledgeable. When talking about the martial arts of the various sects in the martial arts world, he is simply at the fingertips of his fingers. I feel that he is even more knowledgeable than the Murong family of Gusu. However, Huang Rong quickly became suspicious. Although she had heard of the reputation of the Jade Maiden Heart Sutra, she did not know that one needed to take off one's clothes to release heat when practicing. Moreover, the book did not look like it was lying to her. But the ancient tomb sect was made up of women. They would not spread such a shameful practice scene. How did he know? Could it be that he and Xiao Long knew? No way. Xiao Long knew Ingua were in love. With her cold personality, she would not do anything that would let Guo down. Could it be that it was the scarlet serpent deity, Limacho, that demon? In the blink of an eye, countless thoughts flashed through Huang Rong's mind. Suddenly, she felt her body turn cold. She discovered that she was only left with the most intimate clothes on her body. She couldn't help but be angry at herself for being so clever. How could she still have so many thoughts at a time like this? Huang Rong didn't care too much. She stared at Song Qing-shu's outstretched hands and coldly said, "If young master takes off my last piece of clothing today, I won't be able to turn back. Young master's scheme is very big. Don't tell me you have something to do with the interests of others?" Who would have thought that Song Qing-shu would not hesitate at all? Instead, he stretched out his hand and hooked it around her chin. He said in a playful tone, "I have long heard that the lady is a female zhuge liang. Up until now, you have not been involved in any of this." Song Mao is a little disappointed. Huang Rong was startled. "What do you mean?" Song Qing-shu stretched out his hand and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. His charming face said, "After this matter, will it be Song Mao who will never be able to turn back, or will it be the lady who will never be able to turn back? Has the lady really thought it through?" Huang Rong was at a loss at first. Then a thought flashed through her mind, and her face gradually turned pale. "I understand." Song Qing-shu smiled with satisfaction. "After this matter, the lady's first thought will be to expose my beastly actions to the world. But the lady is not an ordinary woman. After she has calmed down, she will definitely not tell anyone else about this matter." Huang Rong's body trembled. Her fingers couldn't help but twitch. It was obvious that Song Qing-shu had guessed what she was thinking. Song Qing-shu continued, "If I tell the world what happened today, it is not certain whether or not I will be destroyed, but the lady's life will be ruined. With the lady's experience, you must understand that the world is far more harsh on women than men, not to mention the lady's high status. I believe that when everyone knows about this matter, their first reaction will not be to investigate me, but to laugh at you, right?" Seeing Huang Rong's lips move, Song Qing-shu did not wait for her to speak and continued, "At that time, not only the lady, but even the hero Guo's life will be ruined. When the time comes to the mention of Xiangyang's Guijing, the world's first reaction will not be a hero, but a poor man who has been cuckolded. Enough." Huang Rong suddenly became very agitated. Chapter 512. "People get anxious," Song Qing-shu said. He really did have the demeanor of a young thug who took liberties with good women. "That's why I said that you won't say a word after this." Huang Rong's face paled. "That's why you dared to do such a thing to me." Song Qing-shu nodded. "That's natural. Although you're charming enough, I'm not the kind of person who would give up my country for a woman. Naturally, you could only silently endure all of this before you dared to make a move." "You." Huang Rong's heart sank. She said calmly, "That's right. Even if you really did something to me, I won't say a word. However, I'll tell Brother Jing everything. He'll take care of it for me." Song Qing-shu tilted his head and looked at Huang Rong. It was as if he wanted to read her real thoughts from her eyes. After a long time, Song Qing-shu smiled in relief. "No, you won't. Brother Jing is a sincere gentleman. I believe that he won't despise me because of this. He won't neglect me." Huang Rong's face was brimming with radiance as she spoke. It was obvious that she believed in her husband's character. "Of course Hero Guo won't despise you, but you'll despise yourself." Song Qing-shu looked like he had a card up his sleeve. "If you were like Xiao Long Nu, who is like a blank piece of paper, I wouldn't dare to do such a thing to you. For a woman like Xiao Long Nu, even if she loses her virginity, she'll confess everything to her lover without hesitation. She won't have the slightest apprehension. But madam, you're different. You're thinking too much. When the time comes, although Hero Guo won't blame you, you'll be worried that you'll leave a thorn in his heart. Instead of creating a barrier between the two of you, you'll definitely keep him in the dark." Hearing Song Qing-shu's words, Huang Rong's entire body seemed to fall apart. There was no longer any spirit in her eyes. She couldn't help but mutter to herself, "Impossible, impossible." You can't have guessed so accurately. It turned out that Huang Rong had been secretly thinking about what she should do if she really lost her chastity here. She thought about it and rejected too many impulses. Finally, she secretly made a decision after weighing the pros and cons. That was, she would pretend that today's incident had never happened, and she would not reveal a word to anyone. But how could Song Qing-shu guess all of this so accurately? Song Qing-shu finally removed the last layer of defense on Huang Rong's body. He could not help but praise Madam is already a mother, but your figure is still like that of a young girl. You're truly a gift from the heavens." Huang Rong's face turned red. She subconsciously turned her head and didn't want to look at him. "Actually, you don't have to be too sad. You won't say anything, so I won't either. No one in the world will know what happened. You'll still be the heroine that everyone admires. Is this really considered losing your virginity?" Seeing Huang Rong's expression change, Song Qingshu's smile deepened. Hero Guo has been busy with the defense of Xiangyang all these years and must not have had the energy to accompany Madam. Madam must be lonely and unbearable in the dead of night. I have admired Hero Guo's character for a long time and understand his difficulties, so I have decided to serve on his behalf, to relieve Madam's physical fatigue and to fulfill his duty. Huang Rong couldn't listen anymore. She couldn't help but spit. "How can you help me with this? You're really shameless." Although Huang Rong was angry, Song Qingshu's words had stirred up some ripples in her heart. Yes, how long had it been since Brother Jing had been intimate with me? Every time he came back from the defense of Xiangyang City, he would be so tired that he would fall asleep. She understood his hard work and naturally wouldn't pester him. After a long time, she seemed to have gotten used to this kind of respectful life. Hearing Huang Rong's scolding, Song Qingshu didn't take it to heart. Instead, he said, "Of course I can help. You only have Hero Guo in your heart. Song Mao wouldn't dare to fight for a place with Hero Guo. You don't have to care about Song Mao. You could just treat Song Mao as an object to relieve your loneliness." Huang Rong's face turned red. She couldn't help but snort, "You talk too much. In the end, you just want my body." "You're right." Song Qingshu couldn't help but lift her chin and kiss her lips. "All I want is Madam's body. Madam uses me to relieve her loneliness. You and I both get what we want. Madam's heart is still Hero Guo's, so it's not betrayal." Huang Rong couldn't help but snort. "Bah, I don't need anything from you." Her heart unconsciously loosened. As long as she maintained her sincerity, it didn't seem like she was betraying Brother Jing. "You really don't need me?" Song Qingshu put his hand between Huang Rong's legs. The smooth touch made both their hearts flutter. Song Qingshu couldn't help but say with a smile, "What you say is true. You don't need Song Mao in your heart, but your body needs Song Mao very much." Huang Rong blinked and was so shy that she was about to cry. She sighed faintly and said, "Don't deliberately humiliate me. Whatever you want to do, just do it. I only hope that you won't make things difficult for me after this." Song Qingshu smiled non-committally and said, "Can I take it that you're taking the initiative to ask me to have sex with you?" Huang Rong turned her face away and said coldly, "Whatever you say. I don't like the way you're acting." Song Qingshu reached out and held her face. "If you don't have sex today, maybe Song Mao will come and pester you in the future." "You..." Huang Rong glared at him. This kind of experience was already a nightmare. If he continued to pester her after this, how could she live in the future? After a long time, Huang Rong said hatefully, "If I let you have sex today, will you let me go in the future? That will depend on your performance." Song Qingshu looked down at her from a higher position. Huang Rong's heart trembled when she met his burning gaze. After hesitating for a long time, she finally said, "Okay, I hope that you will keep your promise in the future." Saying it was one thing and doing it was another. Even though Huang Rong was a married woman, she was more nervous and shy than on her wedding night. She slowly untied the belt on her dress and took it off. She shyly spread her legs. When the burning and hard penetrating feeling came, Huang Rong's body and soul felt a tremor that she had never felt before. A stream of tears flowed down her slightly flushed cheeks. Huang Rong knew that she had let Jing Ji down. But now that the rice had already turned into a boat, in order to prevent the man on top of her from finding an excuse to pester her again, she could only wrap her legs around his waist and slowly twist her soft waist to meet the man's thrusts again and again. Chapter 513. After the storm subsided, Huang Rong sat up straight and cleaned her body while putting on her clothes. She hesitated for a moment and finally snorted shyly. "Were you satisfied just now?" Song Qingshu also sat up and hugged her waist from behind. He leaned over and said, Satisfied? Of course I was satisfied. Madam's charms are indeed not to be known to outsiders. Hearing his vulgar words, Huang Rong could not help but blush. She struggled to remember. Since you have gotten what you wanted, please keep your promise. You won't harass Madam anymore. Song Qingshu's expression became strange. But after tasting Madam's beauty, how could I forget? I don't care, that's your business. Feeling the breath by her ear, Huang Rong panicked and hurriedly put on her clothes. She did not even notice that the knot on her clothes was tied incorrectly. Song Qingshu laughed. If Song Mao can't help but come to Xiangyang to visit Madam in the future, Madam, please don't refuse. Hearing that Song Qingshu still wanted to pester her, Huang Rong could not help but turn pale. We had a deal. Perhaps Madam has gotten used to Hirogua's loyalty, but has forgotten an unchanging truth. How many of the words a man says in bed can be taken seriously? Seeing Huang Rong's willowy eyebrows raised, Song Qingshu reached out and caressed her still blushing face. Madam, you don't have to be so angry. This kind of thing, what's the difference between doing it once and doing it 10 times? Moreover, wasn't Madam quite happy just now? Shut up. Huang Rong's chest violently rose and fell. Her heart could not help but tremble when she thought of some embarrassing scenes from before. Song Qingshu helped Huang Rong tidy up her clothes and smiled gently. After fighting for so long, Madam's body can't withstand any more torment. We still have to raid the camp tonight. Madam should go back and rest early. Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Huang Rong almost fainted from anger. She was bullied by him and still had to fight for him. Huang Rong felt a surge of anger in her chest. She could no longer hold it in and angrily cursed. You are shameless. As she cursed, the image of Song Qingshu in front of her became blurry. Huang Rong was startled and realized that the surrounding environment was also beginning to distort. Madame Gua, a gentle female voice came from the distant sky, and it was filled with anxiety. Huang Rong subconsciously rubbed her eyes and suddenly realized that she was in the arms of the 9th princess. Song Qingshu was looking at her with a puzzled expression not far away. She was shocked and subconsciously pushed Audiobook away. Madame Gua, this is a little unkind of you. Audiobook saw that you fainted and has been giving you qi to heal. As soon as you wake up, you treat him like this. Aren't you biting the hand that feeds you? Song Qingshu couldn't help but snort. Huang Rong was about to scold him, but Song Qingshu's words were strange. Her mind was in a mess. She subconsciously looked down at her clothes and found that they were still intact. There were no signs that they had been violated. She had always been a careful person and recognized the knot on her clothes. It was impossible for others to imitate it. What's going on? Huang Rong was dumbfounded. I also wanted to ask Madam. Audiobook and I were making out inside, but when we heard movement outside, we found that Madam had fainted outside. She seemed to be possessed and kept talking nonsense. Song Qingshu unhappily rolled his eyes at her. It was obvious that he was quite resentful of Huang Rong for interrupting their good time. Hearing Song Qingshu's bold words, Audiobook blushed and couldn't help but glare at him. He hurriedly explained to Huang Rong, Madam, don't listen to this person's nonsense. We didn't. Audiobook was stunned to find that he didn't know how to continue talking about what they had just done in the room. He hurriedly changed the topic and said, When we opened the door, we found that Madam's face was red and she seemed to be in a coma. There seemed to be signs of qigong deviation. We didn't dare to move Madam, so we circulated our qi to heal her. Huang Rong then remembered to look around and found that it was the place where she had been eavesdropping outside the door. Huang Rong was a quick-witted person and quickly realized that she had been eavesdropping outside the door. She didn't know why she suddenly had qigong deviation, causing the devil to invade her. Everything she remembered after that was just a dream. It was just a nightmare. She didn't lose her chastity. Huang Rong couldn't help but feel ecstatic and almost jumped in joy. Brother Song, did Madam go crazy again? Her expression is very strange now. Audiobook couldn't help but whisper to Song Qingshu. Huang Rong reacted and hurriedly said, Thank you for your concern, 9th princess. I'm fine now. As she spoke, Huang Rong suddenly remembered that Song Qingshu seemed to have mentioned that she was talking nonsense. If she told him everything about the nightmare, wouldn't it be embarrassing? Ninth Princess, did I say anything when I was suffering from qi deviation just now? Although it was just a nightmare, Song Qingshu in the dream had left a deep impression on Huang Rong. She subconsciously didn't dare to talk to him and could only try to ask Ajio. Hearing Huang Rong's question, Ajio's expression suddenly became extremely strange. He looked at her and then at Song Qingshu. Finally, he bit his lip and said, "Madam is thinking too much." Madam's ravings were really vague. I didn't hear it clearly. Huang Rong was a cold person. Seeing her reaction, how could she not know that the other side must have heard something? Thinking of the conversation between her and Song Qingshu in the dream, Huang Rong's face, which had just returned to normal color, suddenly turned red. She almost couldn't help but run away. Fortunately, many years of cultivation made her calm down, but her voice still trembled slightly. I was delirious just now. If I said something that offended the two of you, I hope the two of you can be magnanimous and not take it to heart. The battle is imminent tonight, so I won't disturb the two of you. I'll take my leave first. After saying that, she didn't wait for the two of them to respond and left in a hurry. Looking at Huang Rong's staggering back, Ajio glanced at Song Qingshu with a smile that wasn't a smile. In Madame Gui's dream, you seem to have bullied her quite badly. Song Qingshu shrugged and said innocently, "She wants to have that kind of messy dream. What did I do?" Ajio couldn't hold back the smile on his face. That can only prove that in her heart, someone is an evil existence. Song Qingshu pretended to be angry and said, "Wow, you even dare to make fun of me. See how your husband will deal with you." After saying that, he carried her while Ajio was begging for mercy and carried her back into the room, back in her bedroom. Huang Rong touched her cheeks with the back of her hand and found that they were already very hot. She couldn't help but spit. "You hussy, how could you have such a dream?" Chapter 514. After a long while, Huang Rong came back to her senses. She had a puzzled expression on her face. Why did I suddenly faint and have this kind of dream? In an instant, Huang Rong's expression changed because she thought of a possibility. Perhaps she had fallen victim to Song Qingshu's soul-shifting technique. However, Huang Rong quickly ruled out this possibility. After all, her body had not truly been violated. Moreover, Ajio was at the side and would not allow Song Qingshu to cause trouble. More importantly, Huang Rong had learned the soul-shifting technique from the 9E manual. She was clear that the mind of a person who had fallen victim to the soul-shifting technique would be controlled by the caster and would often not remember what they had done. Since she could still clearly recall the scene in her dream, it was naturally impossible for her to have fallen victim to the soul-shifting technique. As soon as she began to recall, Huang Rong's thoughts became somewhat uncontrollable. The humiliating scenes in the dream came one after another. When Song Qingshu entered her, the submission of her body and the trembling of her soul caused Huang Rong's entire body to involuntarily tremble. This dream is a bit too realistic. Although Huang Rong did not look at herself in the mirror, the burning sensation on her cheeks made her understand that her cheeks had long since become incomparably red. No wonder Song Qingshu in the dream had always grasped her thoughts so well. So this Song Qingshu was imagining it. Huang Rong bit her lip and recalled the scenes in the dream where Song Qingshu had forced her to submit. She suddenly came to a realization. Since everything was caused by my subconscious, why did it develop like that later? Could it be that I subconsciously wanted to be violated by the surname Song? Huang Rong's expression immediately changed. The honesty of her body and the torment of her conscience caused Huang Rong to constantly worry about gains and losses. She even forgot to investigate the reason for her qi deviation. Just like that, she tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep until the appointed time for everyone to set off. Did everyone have a good rest? Song Qingshu asked with a smile as he looked at the people arriving one after another. Xiao Feng laughed straightforwardly. This Xiao has long since rested and is only waiting for a big battle. The others nodded in agreement. Only Huang Rong smiled bitterly. Today's events had greatly shaken her mind. After returning, she had not been able to sleep, causing her to be dispirited and listless. How could she tell others the reason for this? She could only imitate them and say that she was fine. Song Qingshu called for his subordinates to bring over a dozen sets of Manchurian soldier clothes. Tonight we are going to fish in troubled waters, so we should disguise ourselves. Yalu Qi's eyes brightened. This one was originally hesitating whether or not to suggest that we change into night clothes. I didn't expect Brother Song Qi to be prepared. This one is a song. Song, I thought. Song Qi this one song, Qi this. Song Qi, Yalu Qi Chun He. Everyone here is famous in Jianghu. I was worried that if I changed your appearance, I might offend you. Zhang Song Shi waved his hand. Qingshu, what are you talking about? Today's matter is not a Jianghu grudge. There is no need to care about those Jianghu rules. The others all nodded in agreement. After everyone changed into the Manchurian soldier uniform, Song Qingshu was amazed. These people are indeed the best in the world. Even if they're wearing the most minor clothes, they still look extraordinary. When Ajio came out, Song Qingshu's eyes brightened. He couldn't help but whisper in her ear, "There is such a handsome soldier in this world. In the future, all the soldiers under my command will follow Ajio's example. Just looking at him is pleasing to the eye." Yalu Nancian happened to pass by them. Hearing Song Qingshu's bold words, she couldn't help but roll her eyes at him and leave. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly. Even though the two of them hadn't seen each other many times, they had left a good impression on each other. Yalu Nancian's swordsmanship was exquisite. What was even more commendable was her tall figure. On top of that, she had a pair of slender legs. She looked like a proud horse. It would be strange if Song Qingshu didn't have a good impression of her. As for Song Qingshu, the impression he left on Yalu Nancian was that he was a calm and unfathomable master. Unfortunately, when Song Qingshu went to Xiao Banhe's courtyard that night, he placed his hands on Xiao Banhe's chest. All of Song Qingshu's demeanor of a master collapsed. Before Song Qingshu could sigh at the impermanence of the world, Huang Rong had finished changing and walked out. Looking at her bulging chest, Song Qingshu couldn't help but curse. With such exaggerated chest muscles, anyone can see that you're a woman disguised as a man. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment and gave up on the idea of binding her chest. Firstly, he was afraid that she would suffocate. Secondly, when Huang Rong's cultivation deviated, he could tell from her ravings that he had caused her a lot of trouble. She was still on guard against him. If he went over to remind her about such a private matter, she might misunderstand his good intentions. Forget it. In any case, we'll be leaving as soon as we arrive. We won't have to face the enemy. If it's a little bigger, then so be it. Song Qingshu rubbed his nose. Looking at everyone who was ready, he said in a low voice, "Let's go." At this time, night had already fallen. Song Qingshu, Ajio, Huang Rong, Zhang Songshi, Yin Lighting, Xiao Feng, Yalu Nancian, Yalu Qi, and the others mounted their horses and quickly disappeared into the forest. "Madame Wa, you don't seem to be in good spirits. The Qing camp is full of danger. In order to avoid any mishaps, I hope that Madame will stay by my side after we enter." Noticing Huang Rong's absent-minded appearance, Song Qingshu frowned. He really didn't want Huang Rong to die in the Qing army's camp. Huang Rong's expression immediately became unnatural. Although she knew that Song Qingshu had good intentions, the things that Song Qingshu did to her in her nightmare were too terrifying. She didn't want to get too close to him. She reflexively refused. Many thanks for Prince Song's good intentions. Although this servant's martial arts aren't as good as young master's, it's more than enough to protect myself. Seeing her refuse, Song Qingshu didn't say anything more. "This one was rude. Please don't blame me, madam." Returning to Ajio's side, Song Qingshu whispered, "Ajio, after we enter the Qing camp, pay attention to Madame Wa." Ajio couldn't help but curl his lips. "You really know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fair sex." Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly. Don't say that. You also know that she has just suffered from qi deviation and her current state isn't too stable. If she dies in the ambush, your big brother Song will become a sinner of Jianghu and be condemned by everyone. Ajio thought about it and agreed. This time, Huang Rong came to help. With her reputation in Jianghu, if she accidentally died, the power that Song Qingshu had painstakingly built would inevitably collapse. Fine, I will secretly protect her. Ajio's martial arts were originally high, and when she and Song Qingshu cultivated together in Shengjing, she received half of his power. Now, in theory, her martial arts were no less than the 5 uniques of the Central Plains. The only thing she lacked was the cultivation of her mental state. Chapter 515. The couple, Guo Jing and Huang Rong, had already become a popular story in the martial arts world. They were the role models of the righteous sections. If Song Qingshu extended his claws to Huang Rong, his reputation in the martial arts world would be tarnished in minutes. Then, his great ambitions would naturally be left with nothing. Song Qingshu suddenly felt embarrassed. Of course I understand. The group soon arrived near the camp of Tu Hai's army. They first met with Yang Miaozhen and agreed on the details of their cooperation. Then, under the cover of the moonlight, several masters quietly sneaked into the camp of the Qing army. Everyone, according to the previous arrangement, is responsible for your respective positions. After successfully igniting the fire, quickly leave the scene. Although this group of people were famous masters in Jianghu, if they really fell into a tight encirclement, they would still die. Song Qingshu had to remind them again. Xiao Feng cupped his fists and said in a low voice, "Brother Song, you can rest assured that the chaos we create will not be too risky. Instead, Brother Song will be assassinating Tu Hai. You must be careful this time. If you see that things are not going well, it is better to give up as soon as possible." Thank you for your concern, Brother Xiao. Song Mao knows what he is doing. Song Qingshu's eyes swept across the crowd and stopped on Ajio and Huang Rong for a moment. He hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he did not say anything and cupped his hands to bid farewell. Farewell. After saying that, his figure flashed and flashed to the back of an unknown tent. Seeing that Song Qingshu had left, the group also hurried to their respective destinations. In the commander's tent of the Qing camp, Tu Hai was lying on the bed, feeling restless and unable to sleep. This was very inconceivable to him. He had been through hundreds of battles. When he was young, he had fought against the roaming king Li Zicheng and the murderous demon king Zhang Xianzhong again and again. He had grown up step by step through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. All these years, he had pacified Chahar and subdued Wang Fuchen. Now, for him, the war was just a game to gain glory. It was just to deal with a mere golden snake camp struggling at death's door. Why did he feel so restless? Tu Hai couldn't figure out the reason, no matter how he thought about it. In the end, he could only attribute it to the fact that the process of the imperial court dispatching troops this time was too unfavorable. Ever since the decision to send troops to destroy the Golden Snake Camp was made, the emperor had changed the time of dispatching troops several times. The reason given by the emperor was not unacceptable. Wait for the Golden Snake Camp to choose a new leader, then catch them all in one fell swoop. However, from Tu Hai's point of view, the emperor's decision was too presumptuous. It was just a group of bandits. Why go through so much trouble? He could just send the army to crush them with the force of Mount Tai. What was the point of wasting so much effort? At the end of the day, it's just an armchair strategist. Tu Hai couldn't help but curse, but he only dared to say this in private. Suddenly, Tu Hai frowned. He seemed to have heard noises coming from afar. Dang, dang, dang. There's a fire. Put out the fire. Tu Hai finally heard clearly what was being shouted outside. As a veteran general, he immediately realized that spies had sneaked into the camp. He was very confident in the defense of his camp. Since there was no external warning, it proved that the people who had sneaked in were just some masters, and the number could not be too large. If you want to fish in troubled waters, watch how I close the door and beat the dogs. Tu Hai snorted coldly and quickly summoned his soldiers to give instructions one by one. Fayamo, take my command flag and order all the soldiers to stay in their tents and not to move. Those who disobey will be beheaded. Majia, take the fire hose team to put out the fire. Mahada, bring my warhorse here. Looking at the steady backs of his soldiers as they left, Tu Hai nodded secretly. After following him for so long, he had learned some of this calmness in the face of danger. These soldiers were all brought out by Tu Hai from his own tribe. They had been retainers of Tu Hai's family for generations and could be said to be his most trusted subordinates. But Tu Hai's mind soon returned to the riot itself. As a veteran of hundreds of battles, he saw through the enemy's plan at a glance. It was said that there was no lack of Jianghu masters in the Golden Snake camp. This time, they had probably selected a few masters to create chaos in the camp by burning the provisions, and then cooperated with the troops outside to take the opportunity to sneak in. Humph, when I was fighting, you were still drinking milk. Tu Hai spat disdainfully. That was why he had asked Mahada to bring his warhorse here, so that he would have enough mobility to appear in the camp where he was needed. Rumble, rumble. The roar coming from afar made Tu Hai's face change. As a famous general of the Qing dynasty, he was too familiar with this sound. It was the sound of elite cavalry charging. Isn't the Golden Snake camp a group of bandits? How can there be such elite cavalry? A trace of doubt flashed in Tu Hai's mind, but he had no time to continue to care about this problem. Instead, he was full of anxiety. Now that the military camp was suffering from internal and external threats, and the enemy still had cavalry, the consequences would be dire if the enemy broke through the outer defense line. Where's Mahada? Why hasn't my horse been brought here yet? Tu Hai could not help but curse. He needed to be at the front line to be at ease. I'm coming. Please forgive me, General. Soon, Mahada's voice came from not far away. The guards subconsciously stopped him, but when they saw Mahada's appearance, they immediately let him go. Son of a bitch, if you delay the military intelligence, I'll kill you. At this time, the enemy had already attacked the entrance of the camp, and the battle cries were getting louder. Tu Hai was burning with anxiety and could not help but pull out his horsewhip to lash Mahada. Mahada's eyes flashed, but in the end, he did not do anything. He let Tu Hai's whip hit him, and then slowly led the horse to Tu Hai. At this time, the situation was urgent, and Tu Hai did not have the time to pursue the other party's responsibility. He took the reins from Mahada and nimbly mounted the horse. I'll deal with it when I'm free. Tu Hai could not continue his words. He looked down at the tip of the saber that was sticking out of his chest and looked at Mahada in disbelief. You, Mahada grinned, and soon revealed his original appearance. He was a young and handsome man. No wonder Mahada would arrive later than expected. This was the last thought in Tu Hai's mind. Then he seemed to see a headless body getting further and further away from him, and then his vision turned black, and he could not see anything. This Mahada was naturally Song Qing-shu. After he left Xiao Feng and the others, he laid an ambush next to the stable. When the real Mahada arrived, he took the opportunity to disguise himself as the real Mahada. Using the identity of Mahada, he deceived the layers of defense and swaggered in front of Tu Hai. Tu Hai is dead. Those who put down their weapons will not be killed. Song Qing-shu stood on the back of the horse, holding Tu Hai's severed head, and glanced at the surrounding soldiers with a cold gaze. All of this took a long time to describe, but it happened in just a few seconds. The surrounding guards finally reacted. Chapter 516. Their kung fu was naturally commendable since they could be the bodyguards of the commander of the army. However, these people's kung fu was more used for fighting head-on when two armies confronted each other. Fighting with Jianghu masters in this complicated environment was definitely not their forte. Seeing a group of bodyguards rushing over, Song Qing-shu skillfully dodged them. Although he had never learned kung fu like the Big Dipper or the Chien Kuen de Nua, once his cultivation reached a certain level, he would be able to master all kinds of kung fu. Borrowing force to fight force was also very effective. After fighting for a while, The group of bodyguards fell to the ground in disorder, no longer fighting. What made them even more depressed was that they only realized now that the fatal injuries on their bodies were all caused by their companions. But Song Qingshu's body was clean, as if he had never done anything. At this time, the battle cries in the distance were getting louder and louder. Song Qingshu knew that the Qing army was anxiously resisting Yang Miaozhen's attack. He couldn't help but admire Tu Hai for being a famous general. He had arranged everything so well in such a short time. But all this was gone. Now that he was dead, he naturally couldn't control the situation of the battle anymore. Song Qingshu jumped onto the commander flag and held up Tu Hai's head. He held a torch in his other hand and shone it on the side. Using his internal force, his deep voice resounded through the whole camp. "Soldiers, listen up. Tu Hai is dead. Those who surrender will not be killed." The voice spread to every corner of the camp again and again. The whole Qing camp suddenly fell into a dead silence. Most of the soldiers of the Eight Banners did not believe it at first. But with the help of the torch, they saw that the head was indeed their commander Tu Hai's. They were all scared out of their wits. Seeing the entire Qing army's camp was in an uproar, Song Qingshu tore down the Qing army's commander's flag. His body flashed, and he dashed toward the camp's gate. Because along the way he had been using Qing gong to fly on the tent roof, the Qing soldiers could not stop him even if they wanted to. The sparse arrows did not pose any threat to him. Very soon, Song Qingshu rushed to the entrance of the camp. He found that although the Qing army was in a panic, they were far from collapsing. His heart could not help sinking. His assassination of Tu Hai had caused the whole camp to be in chaos. But if he could not break through the gate and let Yang Miaozhen and her troops in, the chaotic camp would eventually return to normal. At that time, the Qing army would probably be able to react. After all, Yang Miaozhen's troops were not many. Shoot him to death. Just as Song Qingshu was feeling anxious, a shrill voice came from not far away. Song Qingshu couldn't help but look towards the source of the voice. He discovered that the speaker was a young officer dressed in fresh clothes and riding a horse. He was shouting loudly to organize the soldiers around him. Song Qingshu had met this person once when he was in the Manchurian Qing imperial court. He was a descendant of a family of generals and was a member of the bordered yellow banner. His Chinese name was Su Hao. However, he had a bad reputation among the disciples of the Eight Banners. Many people in the capital secretly called him a hypocrite. But now, the Qing army was still able to stabilize the situation here. Perhaps it was mostly because of him. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Given time, he might grow into a famous general in the Manchurian Qing imperial court. Jilan is in the way. I have to get rid of him. Song Qingshu sighed in pity. At this time, the rain of arrows from the Qing army had also covered them. At this moment, the rain of arrows from the Qing army had already engulfed them. Song Qingshu transferred his energy to the martial flag in his hand and turned around to protect his body. Seeing that Song Qingshu was able to stop the rain of arrows from the entire group of archers with only one flag, the Qing army nearby were all dumbfounded. "What are you standing there for? Continue shooting." Su Hao was angry and anxious. He whipped an archer nearby. Su Hao had heard of Song Qingshu's reputation as the #1 expert of the Manchurian Qing, but he had never cared about it. In his opinion, what could a martial arts expert do in front of thousands of soldiers and horses? But now that he had seen it with his own eyes, he found that his confidence was not as strong as before. What kind of person was Song Qingshu? He had already grasped the gap between the Qing army's arrows and swung the commander's flag in a circle. The arrows stuck in the flag were shot back at a speed faster than when they came. The group of archers were immediately thrown off their horses. Looking at the arrows stuck in his chest, Su Hao had a look of disbelief on his face. "Am I going to die just like this?" He fell down unwillingly. Following Su Hao's death, the Qing army's already shaky defensive line finally collapsed. Yang Miaozhen finally led her troops into the main camp. "Brother Song, you killed 2 generals in a row among thousands of soldiers and horses. I really admire you." While commanding the troops to continue charging into the camp, Yang Miaozhen stopped her horse and looked at Song Qing-shu with a look of admiration. Song Qing-shu smiled and threw Tu Hai's severed head to her. I'll leave the rest to you. It'll be more effective if you take this with you. Although Yang Yaojin was a woman, she looked excited when she saw the bloody head. This is really a good tool. I will look for Brother Song when I go back. I will leave first. Go. After saying that, she tied Tu Hai's head to the neck of her horse and led the rest of her bodyguards toward the main camp of the Qing army. Looking at Yang Yaojin's vigorous figure, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but touch his nose. What a tough woman. With a tap of his foot, Song Qing-shu stood on the top of the sentry tower. He looked around the main camp of the Qing army and found that there were flames everywhere. The soldiers of the 8 banners were running away in all directions. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. He had finally succeeded in making the Qing army's camp fall into chaos. But this time, Tu Hai's subordinates were all elites. Although most of the Qing army didn't know what had happened and could only run away with the crowd, there were still a few Qing soldiers in the main camp who were trying to gather together under the organization of low-ranking officers. Song Qing-shu frowned. If these people successfully gathered the troops, Yang Yaojin's troops would be in trouble. With a flash, Song Qing-shu quickly arrived at one of the locations. To his surprise, he discovered that Xiao Feng, Yalu Qi, Zhang Songshi, and Yin Lighting were fighting against a large group of Qing army soldiers. All of them had wounds on their bodies, and it seemed that their injuries were not light. Xiao Feng looked around and quickly saw Song Qing-shu. He hurriedly shouted, "Brother Song, don't worry about us. Go and save Chief Huang, the 9th princess, and the others. And my sister." Yalu Qi couldn't help but shout. Song Qing-shu was startled. Although it was dangerous, they still had the strength to fight. They wouldn't be in danger for a while. After casually throwing out arrows to kill a few archers in the surroundings, Song Qing-shu went in the direction Xiao Feng had pointed him to. Not long after, he saw a dazzling sword light not far from him. Song Qing-shu had fought with Yelu Nancian before, so he knew that this was her Sun and Moon Divine Sword. If it wasn't for the fact that she was in a critical situation, she wouldn't have used such a large amount of true qi to activate her ultimate skill. He hurriedly sped up and rushed in that direction. Chapter 517. After they separated from Song Qing-shu, although these people used their martial arts to successfully set fire everywhere, they were intercepted by the Qing soldiers before they could retreat. They ran left and right, but not only did they not succeed in breaking out of the encirclement, they were instead forced together by the Qing soldiers. As the encirclement grew closer and closer, Xiao Feng made a prompt decision. He and a few other men decided to stay behind and bring up the rear while the women retreated first. But there were too many Qing soldiers. Even though Xiao Feng and the others split up, there were still quite a lot of soldiers chasing after the women. In fact, whether it was Huang Rong, Ajio, or Yelu Nancian, they were all top martial arts masters in the martial world. They shouldn't have been in such a difficult situation. But the nature of the battlefield was different from the martial arts competition in the martial world. On the battlefield, there were enemies everywhere. Dodging and dodging were useless. They could only use the simplest and fastest moves to deal with the enemies around them. Any fancy moves were suicidal, and Huang Rong and the others were experts in fancy martial arts. Add to that the nature of women, they couldn't even use 30% of their strength in front of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. On top of that, Tu Hai was well trained. Although these 8 banner soldiers didn't have high martial arts skills, their teamwork was seamless, and the gaps that appeared were immediately filled by others, putting the women in danger. Among the 3 women, Yelu Nancian's performance was the best. After all, she had grown up on horseback. She had seen many battles like this. But the more dazzling she was, the better she was at attracting mockery. More and more Qing soldiers rushed over, and soon the 3 women were separated. Half chased after Huang Rong and Ajio, while the other half surrounded Yelu Nancian. After an unknown amount of time, Yelu Nancian felt her arms getting heavier and heavier. Every time she swung her sword, it was as if she had to use 10 times her usual strength. She could feel that her sword was becoming blunt, and she didn't know when it would break. With a swing of the sword, Yalu Nancian broke a dozen spear tips in front of her. Suddenly, she felt her breath catch in her throat, unable to breathe. Looking at the spear tips coming at her from behind, Yalu Nancian closed her eyes, resigned to her fate. She didn't feel the pain she imagined. Instead, she felt a warm embrace and heard the screams of the Qing soldiers. Yalu Nancian opened her eyes in disbelief and was shocked to find herself in Song Qingshu's arms. Dozens of steel sabers seemed to be controlled by an invisible pair of giant hands, spinning rapidly around the two of them, harvesting the lives of the soldiers that came their way. After witnessing Song Qingshu's magnificent scene of tens of thousands of flying swords at the Golden Snake Summit, Yalu Nancian naturally understood that this was all thanks to Song Qingshu. "You're awake?" Song Qingshu lowered his head and smiled at her. "Song Yu." Finished speaking, he held Yalu Nancian in his arms and strolled out of the hall. Dozens of steel sabers flew around the two of them. Any 8-banner soldiers who tried to stop them fell to the ground as soon as they touched the edge of the sabers. Soon, no one dared to stop them anymore. Everyone avoided the sabers like snakes or scorpions. Wherever the two of them passed, the soldiers in front of them would naturally open up a path. "I didn't close my eyes because I fell asleep. Okay?" Hearing that Song Qingshu had woken up, Yalu Nancian's stomach was filled with gloom. But thinking about how she was forced into a corner by the tide of soldiers, and how he was so relaxed, as if he was taking a stroll in his own garden, she couldn't help but fall into a daze. "Do you think I'm very handsome right now, and have the urge to fall in love with me?" Yalu Nancian was startled awake by Song Qingshu's voice, pushing him away. "You're the one who's not being honest." Yalu Nancian blushed. "I saved you from thousands of soldiers and horses, and you think I'm dishonest?" Song Qingshu could not help but shout. The two of them had already broken through the encirclement. The morale of the 8-banner soldiers behind them was already low. In addition, the camp was becoming more and more chaotic. They looked at each other and soon dispersed. No one was foolish enough to chase after them. "You could have protected me normally, but you insisted on hugging me all the way." Thinking back to what happened just now, Yalu Nancian was a little dazed. Was this what it felt like to be hugged by a man? "You've seen through me." Song Qingshu was thick-skinned enough that he was not embarrassed at all after being seen through. Shouldn't a hero save a damsel in distress be like this? Countless heroes have done it this way. I can't be a maverick. Yalu Nancian was speechless. You sure know how to twist words and force logic. Song Qingshu smiled faintly, not wanting to dwell on this topic any longer. "Oh right, I heard Brother Xiao that Gio and Madame Wu were together. Where are they?" "Aya." Yalu Nancian slapped her forehead, anxiously pointing in a direction not far away. "They escaped in that direction. Let's go save them. Let's go." "Hey, why are you hugging me again? Your Qinggong is too weak." Finally, he saw Gio and Huang Rong. The two of them were standing back to back against the surrounding soldiers. There were several bloodstains on their clothes, but he didn't know if it was their own or someone else's. Song Qingshu was burning with anxiety. With a roar, he leaped over. The two women were really too beautiful. It wasn't known who had the idea, but a group of soldiers surrounded the two women, trying to capture them alive. If it wasn't for that, they probably wouldn't have lasted this long. Seeing that the two women were out of energy, just as they were about to rush forward, dozens of steel knives suddenly fell from the sky. The people in front didn't even have time to react before their lives were reaped by the knives. The sudden change caught everyone unprepared. The Qing troops retreated one after another, warily looking at the man who suddenly appeared in the middle. When Gio saw Song Qingshu's figure clearly, he could not help excitedly stepping forward to hug him. Choking with sobs, he said, "Song Lang, Gio thought I would never see you again. It's my fault. I made you risk your life." Feeling Gio's slightly trembling body, Song Qingshu understood that she was very emotional and quickly patted her to comfort her. Huang Rong, who was beside him, felt extremely embarrassed when she saw the two of them being so affectionate. She wanted to thank them, but didn't know how to say it. Moreover, She hadn't recovered from her previous nightmare, so she was subconsciously flustered when she saw Song Qingshu's appearance. After a while, the surrounding Qing soldiers finally reacted, shouting and charging at them again. Song Qingshu noticed that Yelu Nanxian was still standing in the same spot. He waved his hand, using the dragon capture skill to pull her over. With Yelu Nanxian's martial arts, it wouldn't be easy for Song Qingshu to pull her over from such a distance. But for some reason, Yelu Nanxian hesitated for a moment, then gave up resisting, even using her Qing Gong to coordinate with him. Her body slowly floated over to his side. No wonder so many girls like the domineering CEO, even a woman like Yelu Nanxian, looks like she's lost her soul. Song Qingshu's expression changed slightly. The theater in his heart had already opened. The feeling of being a domineering so isn't bad. Chapter 518. In the end, the Qing army's main camp was in chaos. The commander-in-chief was dead. Those who wanted to resist were defeated one by Song Qingshu and Yang Miaozhen's troops. The remaining people did not have time to think too much. They blindly followed the others and fled toward the mountains. For all. In the Eagle Gully, Chu Honglu was sleeping soundly in his tent with his concubine in his arms. Suddenly, a trusted aide ran out in a panic. "Bad news, boss, bad news." Aya. Half of Chia's white body was still exposed outside the blanket. When a man suddenly barged in, she instinctively screamed. Chu Honglu was naturally very unhappy that his woman had been exposed. He looked at the person and said darkly, "What's wrong with me?" Outside. The confidant pointed outside the tent. It was obvious that he was too nervous to complete a sentence. "What's going on outside?" At this moment, Chu Honglu could vaguely hear the commotion coming from outside. His heart skipped a beat. Qing army as far as the eye can see. His trusted aide heaved a sigh of relief and finally understood. "What?" Chu Honglu felt a chill run down her spine. She had no intention of pursuing the matter of the other party's offense. She grabbed the other party's collar and said, "Isn't the Qing army stationed at Fox Hill? Why would they suddenly appear here?" "The Qing army at Fox Slope has been routed, and they are all fleeing in this direction," the trusted aide explained hastily. "That's impossible." This was Chu Honglio's first reaction. How could Song Qingshu really do it with 8,000? The battle cries outside grew louder and louder. Chu Honglu finally came back to her senses. She rushed out of the tent to take a look. The Qing army that had dispersed from Fox Slope was surging toward her like a flood. Her hands and feet immediately turned ice cold. The eyes of these fleeing Qing soldiers immediately turned red when they saw that someone was blocking their escape route. F***, let's go all out. Killing one isn't a loss. Killing two is a gain. All along, Chu Honglu did not believe that the Qing army would be defeated. He was only pulling his men and horses to put up an act here, so that it would be easier for him to shirk responsibility later. If even the leader had such an attitude, the soldiers under him would not take it seriously. The thousands of men under Chu Honglu did not even have time to react before they were scattered by the Manchurian routed army. My soldiers. Looking at the one-sided tragedy, Chu Honglio's heart was bleeding. Having been in the underworld for so many years, he knew better than anyone that in this chaotic world, having soldiers was the key to success. Yet his own capital had been destroyed in the blink of an eye. How could he not be heartbroken? "Boss, hurry up and leave. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late." The nearby subordinates all came over to dissuade him. Chu Honglu was an ambitious and ruthless person, so how could he not know what awaited him after losing his power and the bet with Song Qingshu? To avoid future humiliation, he was hot-headed. He pulled out his knife and wanted to commit suicide. However, from the corner of his eyes, he saw his concubine's pitiful look and subconsciously thought that he hadn't slept enough with this concubine. He didn't know which bastard would take advantage of him after he died. His courage instantly disappeared without a trace. Chu Honglu put down his knife and fled in panic with a few of his trusted subordinates. He still had a sliver of hope in his heart. No matter what, I'm still a veteran of Golden Snake Battalion. Even if I don't have any meritorious service, I've still worked hard. What would that Song Qingshu dare to do to me? Chu Honglio's troops, numbered in the thousands, and had the geographical advantage. After the Manchurian routed army broke through Old Eagle Trench's defensive line, they also suffered heavy losses. Of course, Chu Honglio's troops were even more miserable. They were almost completely wiped out. After successfully breaking through the encirclement, the 8-banner soldiers had just breathed a sigh of relief when they saw soldiers lying in ambush in the forest in front of them, waving the banners of Tiandihui. Just as the 8-banner soldiers were about to grit their teeth and fight bitterly, they were shocked to find that the soldiers lying in ambush had no intention of attacking them. They were only blocking one path, leaving another gap. Although a discerning person could tell at a glance that the other gap was a trap, these routed soldiers were like drowning people who had suddenly seen a straw. How could they care so much, now that their pursuers were hot on their heels? How could they be willing to waste time breaking through Tiandihui's defensive line? One by one, they fled toward the gap that had been deliberately left behind. People were often like this. When they felt that they were going to die, they would often have the courage to risk their lives. But once they felt that there was a glimmer of hope, no one wanted to risk their lives anymore. Their courage would instantly disappear. This was the reason why, when the Qing troops encountered Chu Honglio's troops, they would risk their lives, and when they encountered Tiandihui's ambush, they would take a detour. It was because Chu Honglio's troops had blocked all their paths of escape, while Tiandihui left them a path of escape. As the Qing troops fled, along the way, Mu Palace, Azure Bamboo Gang, Xia Qingqing's troops, a Mei faction, and other ambushers appeared one after another. All of them blocked one path of escape, leaving one path of escape. The Qing troops were forced to change their route continuously. Finally, they arrived in front of a riverbed that was almost dried up. Hey, why is there so little water in this river? It was not that there were no smart people among the routed soldiers. Damn, what are you talking about? Now that the riverbed has dried up, it's convenient for us to run for our lives. Heaven is really helping us. However, most of the people did not have that kind of vigilance. One by one, they were overjoyed and ran with all their might toward the other side of the river. When more and more people squeezed onto the riverbed, a thunderous rumble suddenly came from the upper reaches of the riverbed. Under the despairing eyes of the Qing troops, a monstrous flood surged toward them at high speed from a nearby mountain. Huang Rong watched as the 8-banners troops behind them jumped into the river without hesitation and were washed away by the flood wave after wave. Even though she still could not face Song Qingshu, she could not help but feel puzzled. She walked to Song Qingshu's side and asked softly, "If these routed soldiers formed a formation near the river, with our military strength, it's hard to say who would win. Why are you so sure that they would rather choose to jump into the river than resist?" Since ancient times, there have been countless high-ranking military officers who chose to fight with their backs against the river. In the end, only Han Xian and Xiang Yu succeeded. "Madam, do you know why?" Song Qingshu said indifferently. Perhaps Huang Rong was shocked by the exaggerated results of this battle, but she felt that this man seemed to have a mysterious halo around him. "Please enlighten me, young master." Song Qingshu was not as modest as he was in the past. Instead, he used a calm tone to narrate. First, their general is not Han Xian or Xiang Yu. Second, most of the time, the soldiers always have a fluke mentality. Even though it's a narrow escape from death, they might not be the lucky one. When he finished, Song Qingshu turned and left, no longer paying attention to the battlefield. In this battle, the 30,000 Qing troops were completely annihilated. The next day, the commander-in-chief of the Manchurian Western Army, Fei Yanggu, looked at someone who was in a sorry state not far away and quickly fell into deep thought. He happened to know the person in front of him. He seemed to be one of Tu Hai's trusted soldiers. His name was Mahada or Muriki. As a dignified general, he naturally would not deliberately remember the name of a soldier. "You, the Eastern Army, is in a tight encirclement, and Tu Hai specially sent you to ask for help?" Fei Yanggu looked at him with a faint smile. Of course, Song Qingshu's current identity was Mahada. He nodded and said, "Yes, I hope that General will quickly send troops to rescue our commander too high, considering that we are comrades. Chapter 519. Song Qingshu's expression changed. Could it be that he had exposed himself? Glancing at Fei Yonggu, who was not far away, Song Qingshu knew that it would not be difficult for him to take Fei Yonggu's life if he were to attack now. However, Fei Yonggu's 25,000 men were not harmed at all. If he took them in, all his previous efforts would be in vain. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment and gave up resisting. He shouted in Mahata's tone, "Fei Yonggu, are you doing this because your Marshal Yu and my general don't get along? Are you doing this on purpose?" Hearing Song Qingshu call him by his name, the guards in the tent were enraged and started cursing. Some even drew their swords, intending to kill him on the spot. Fei Yonggu waved his hand to stop his subordinates. "Wait, untie this warrior." Seeing Mohada's angry eyes, Fei Yonggu's eyes revealed a hint of admiration. "You are loyal to your general." Song Qingshu secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but his face was full of resentment. "I don't know what the general means by this." Fei Yonggu did not explain. Instead, he asked, "Tu Hai has 30,000 elite soldiers. The Golden Snake Battalion only has 10 to 20,000 old, weak, sick, and disabled people. How can they surround Tu Hai?" Although Fei Yonggu was doubtful, he believed most of it. After all, the other party's behavior just now did not seem like that of a spy. Furthermore, Tu Hai and Yulu did not get along well with each other, and only a few people knew about it. The fact that the other party could reveal this relationship proved that he was indeed Tu Hai's confidant. Song Qingshu was enlightened and explained unhurriedly, "The Golden Serpent Camp's troops are naturally nothing in my general's eyes. My general has been like a hot knife through butter. Just as we were about to completely annihilate the Golden Snake Battalion, two people suddenly appeared from behind. We were caught unprepared and suffered heavy losses. Fortunately, General Tu Hai was calm in the face of danger. On one hand, he led the rest of his men to stabilize their position. On the other hand, he sent our bodyguards to break out of the encirclement and seek help." Fei Yonggu furrowed his brows. "Do you know which faction the people that suddenly appeared belonged to?" Song Qingshu pretended to grit his teeth and said, "We've been fighting for so long, so of course we can recognize each other. One of them is the Red Coat Army, the other is the Khitan Army." According to the previous intelligence, Yang Miaozhen of the Red Coat Army and the king of the Khitan Kingdom's South Yard had both participated in the Golden Snake meeting. Fei Yonggu immediately believed most of it. I wonder what benefits the Golden Snake Camp had promised them, that they actually dared to openly dispatch their troops to oppose the Qing dynasty. The Red Coat Army was slightly better. After all, they had been very active in the Jin Kingdom for the past few years and had been fighting against the Jurchen Kingdom. Fei Yonggu did not expect that even the Khitans would send their troops. The imperial court has just signed a ceasefire agreement with Liao. How dare they send their troops out in public? Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment before saying in a low voice, "I heard General Tu mention that Liao stopped the war with the West King of Peace, but not with our court." Fei Yonggu was shocked. As a high-ranking military official, how could he not know the delicate relationship between the imperial court and the West King of Peace, Wu Sangue? Seeing that Wu Sangue was involved, his expression immediately became very serious. "General Fei, I have offended you just now. I hope you can be magnanimous. Now that our General Tu is struggling, I hope you can quickly send your troops to his aid. After this, if you want to kill him or cut him up, I will not even frown." Song Qingshu suddenly spoke, interrupting Fei Yonggu's thoughts. Fei Yonggu thought about it and agreed. Tu Hai had always been prestigious in the imperial court. If he did not send his troops in time and cause Tu Hai's army to be defeated, then someone would accuse him of not saving a dying man. If the emperor was in a bad mood that day and blamed him for the failure, then he would be finished. However, Fei Yonggu was after all a veteran military official. Although he had decided to send his troops, he did not show any of it on his face. Instead, he carefully asked the soldier in front of him for some details. "How many troops does the Red Coat Army and the Khitan Kingdom have?" How many percent of your Eastern Army's forces are left? The Redcoat Army has about 10,000 men. The Khitan Kingdom's forces are not many, only about 1 or 2,000. However, they are all elite cavalry, and their combat power cannot be underestimated. Song Qingshu answered one by one. Fei Yonggu secretly nodded. This was logical. If the Khitan Kingdom's forces could appear here on a large scale, then the Imperial Court's border defense would not be useless. Right now, they're being held up by our Eastern Army. If General can lead the Western Army to appear behind them in time, our two armies will work together and we will definitely be able to completely eliminate the enemy. Song Qingshu intentionally tried to tempt him. Seeing that Fei Yonggu still had some hesitation, Song Qingshu decided to give him another dose of strong medicine. Our general said that if General Fei acts righteously this time, our general will give the credit for this battle to General Fei. At that time, he will even request the Imperial Court to confer the title of Marquis to General Fei. Fei Yonggu was finally moved. Although he was deeply trusted by Yulu, and his position was not low at such a young age, he did not have any merit to show. If he could obtain the credit for destroying the Golden Snake Camp and gain the favor of another big shot in the army, then he would have a meteoric rise in the future. I did not send my troops to rescue you for any merit. We are all working for the Imperial Court, so we should help each other out, Fei Yonggu suddenly said seriously. It was done. Song Qingshu was secretly happy. He quickly followed the other's tone and started to flatter Fei Yonggu. That's right. General, you have done your best for the Qing dynasty. You are indeed our role model. Fei Yonggu's face revealed a trace of smile. He was quite pleased. This bodyguard was loyal and tactful. He was indeed a rare talent. It was a pity that he was Tu Hai's trusted aide. Otherwise, it would be pretty good to promote him to be his bodyguard. Fei Yonggu also made a prompt decision. Since he had decided to send out his troops, he would not delay any longer. Someone, pass down my order. Immediately pull out the fort and send out the troops. All lightly equipped cavalry and 3 days' worth of dry rations are to march day and night to Fox Hill at full speed. The rest of the supply troops will slowly follow behind. Fei Yonggu understood the principle of speed in war. Although this kind of marching would make the soldiers very tired, as long as they could reach Fox Hill in time and coordinate with Tu Hai, they would be able to successfully destroy the enemy's main force. If they were to march at a normal speed, and if Tu Hai's Eastern Army could not hold on any longer and was destroyed by the enemy, then the enemy would be lying in ambush at Fox Hill. Even if his soldiers were at full strength, they would not be able to hold on. After weighing the pros and cons, Fei Yonggu would rather let his soldiers be more tired. Under Fei Yonggu's constant urging, the Western Army marched day and night. The journey that would normally take 3 days was completed in 1 day and 1 night. Looking at Fox Hill a few miles away, Tu Hai's Eastern Army's flag was still there. Fei Yonggu secretly let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they had arrived in time. Fei Yonggu was recognized by Yulu at such a young age. Naturally, he was also very capable. Previously, they had marched day and night. Seeing that they were about to arrive, they were not in a hurry to lead the troops out. Instead, they let the troops stop and rest for 4 hours. Once their combat power had recovered, they would rush out again. Chapter 520. Fei Yonggu's mind was in turmoil, and he was not in the mood to rest. He stood at a high vantage point and observed the situation at Fox Hill. There was a circle of tents outside the Eastern Army's camp. According to the flags, there were Golden Snake Battalion, Redcoat Army, Khitans, and some other messy flags. They seemed to be the flags of some Jianghu sect, just a bunch of mobs. Fei Yonggu smiled disdainfully. Even though the enemy's coalition had a large number of people, the level of their tents and formations were terrible. Once they were attacked, they would not be able to organize a counterattack in a short period of time. Fei Yonggu was confident that he could destroy the enemy's camp with just his own troops, not to mention the cooperation of Tu Hai's Eastern Army. Fei Yonggu was finally relieved, but to make sure nothing went wrong, he called Mahata over and asked him some questions about the details. Song Qingshu was already prepared. Even if he was occasionally asked some unexpected questions, his mind worked quickly and he easily dealt with them. For hours later, Fei Yonggu ordered his troops to move out and kill the enemy's camp at Fox Hill. The earth-shattering battle cries soon resounded through the entire valley. The Golden Snake Battalion's coalition did not expect the Qing army to suddenly appear behind them and fled in panic. It was as he expected. The corner of Fei Yonggu's mouth curled up slightly. But he soon felt that something was wrong. It was too easy for them to kill their way in. Even though the enemy's general was useless, according to his intelligence, the Golden Snake Battalion's coalition had at least 20 to 30,000 people. There were at least 20 to 30,000 people, and their resistance seemed to be a little too weak. However, when Fei Yonggu saw Tu Hai's army rushing out of the barracks, he quickly threw away the last of his worries. Humph! The Eastern and Western armies combined had a total of 50,000 elites. No matter how many tricks you had up your sleeves, in the face of absolute power, it would all be for naught. Not long after, Fei Yonggu's expression suddenly changed. In order to meet up with Tu Hai, he had already ordered his troops to stop. But Tu Hai's army did not seem to have any intention of stopping. Mahata, where is your general Tu? Fei Yonggu looked carefully and did not see Tu Hai in the Eastern army. He turned around and asked Mahata, who was beside him. However, what entered his eyes was a snow-white saber light. Fei Yonggu's vision darkened, and the last thought in his life was, "Oh no, I've been tricked." Before the surrounding Qing troops could react, they discovered that Fei Yonggu's head and body were separated from his body, while the Eastern army, who were supposed to be their allies, brandished their butcher's knife without the slightest scruple. As soon as the two sides came into contact, the defenseless Western army suffered heavy losses. Because both sides were wearing Qing army uniforms, the soldiers at the back had no idea what was going on. In addition, with the death of their commander, the Western army was in chaos without a commander. They were surrounded by Qing soldiers, but they were waving their swords at them. The soldiers of the Western army could not tell who their enemies were, and they could not trust anyone. They only trusted the swords in their hands. Anyone who tried to get close to them would be killed. The Western army killed each other countless times. At this moment, Song Qingshu had already left the battlefield and was standing on a high ground far away. He looked coldly at the chaotic situation in the valley. After nearly losing their lives in the hands of the Western army that night, Huang Rong, Ajio, and the other women no longer went to the battlefield. At this moment, they were standing behind Song Qingshu with Zhou Zhuo, Xia Qingqing, and the other women who had just returned from the previous battle. They looked at the familiar back of the man in front of them with complicated expressions. Ajio's face was filled with excitement, and his eyes seemed to be filled with tears. "Imperial Father, do you see this? This is the son-in-law that Ajio found. The Eight Banners army, which is said to be invincible in 10,000, has been easily annihilated by him in the past few days. If the great Ming dynasty had him, how could it have been destroyed by the trifling Jinlu? Imperial Father, Ajio has never been as confident as he is now. Don't worry, I will definitely restore the great Ming dynasty and continue the line of incense burning in the Zhu family's imperial ancestral temple." A hint of excitement appeared on Zhou Zhuruo's usually cold face. "Master, you let this disciple glorify the Yamei. This disciple will never forget it. According to the current situation, what this disciple can do in the future is not just glorify the Yamei in Jianghu. Perhaps I can even..." Zhou Zhuruo's fair face involuntarily blushed. However, when she saw the women surrounding Song Qingshu, her expression suddenly became uncertain. Xia Qingqing secretly sighed. "Big brother Yuan, I know you will definitely blame me. Not only did I give the Golden Snake Battalion to him, I also gave myself. But if your spirit is in heaven, and you see everything he has done for the Golden Snake Battalion, I'm afraid you will also admire him." Yellow Nanqian's eyes lit up. "These past few years, our great Liao has been stuck between the Jurchen and Jurchen. Now that Song Qingshu has appeared, the Manchurian Qing can't even take care of themselves. The Jin dynasty is also being held back by the Southern Song dynasty. There's also the Red Coat army in the country. Our great Liao may have a chance to reclaim our lost land and restore our ancestral temple. Huang Rong's thoughts were the most complicated. Not only is this person extremely skilled in martial arts, but he also commands troops like a god. He is truly an extraordinary person. If we can get his help, the problem of Xiangyang will definitely be solved. Brother Jing will also be safe. With Huang Rong's intelligence, how could she not see that if things continued like this, Xiangyang would not be able to escape the destruction of the city? What awaited her and her husband would be a miserable fate. Now that there was finally a glimmer of light in the gloomy future, how could she not be happy? However, that strange dream had made her heart palpitate. Subconsciously, she was a little afraid of this man. After struggling for a long time, Huang Rong finally made up her mind. For Brother Jing's sake, I have to be on good terms with him. Sigh, if he could take a liking to Fu then everything will be fine. Huang Rong, on the other hand, knew that although Guofu had inherited her beauty, her personality was too impetuous. Perhaps there would still be many men who would like her, but Song Qingshu was definitely not one of them. There were simply too many outstanding women around him. If only she had a daughter who was not only as beautiful as her, but was also smart and had a likable personality. How great would that be? Huang Rong's face suddenly turned red. What was she thinking about? As the women were letting their imaginations run wild, Song Qingshu's body trembled. He suddenly turned his head to look at a small hill in the distance. His expression immediately became extremely ugly. Song Qingshu's reaction caused the women to be at a loss. One after another, they looked in that direction, but they did not see anything. However, not long after, 1, 2, 3 soon, the top of the hill was filled with a row of Manchurian cavalry troops. Looking at the banners, they were the troops of the Northern Army, Sabusu. Chapter 5:21. The sudden appearance of a Northern Army made everyone on the Golden Snake Camp side nervous. Originally, the Golden Snake Camp would have been able to devour the Manchurian Western Army in one breath in a couple of hours. Now that the Northern Army had appeared, the situation was instantly reversed. Not only would the Golden Snake Camp not be able to devour the Western Army, but it was very likely that the hunters would become the prey and be devoured by the Northern Army in one breath. Looking at the chaotic scene in the valley, Sabusu frowned deeply. How could he not see that the Golden Snake Camp had disguised themselves as two Hai's troops in Qing army uniforms, causing the Western Army to kill each other? Judging from the current situation, since the Golden Snake Camp was wearing the uniforms of two Hai's troops, the Eastern Army of two Hai was probably finished. This was exactly what Sabusu could not understand. Tu Hai was a famous general who had been through hundreds of battles and had 30,000 troops. How could he be wiped out without a sound? General, should we rush down to rescue the Western Army? Seeing Sabusu was silent, the deputy general beside him could not help but ask for permission. Rescue? Sabusu had a strange expression on his face. Now that the Golden Snake Camp and the Western Army are wearing the same uniforms, how are you going to rescue them? The deputy general was speechless for a moment. He understood that Sabusu was telling the truth. Now that the two sides were fighting, it was difficult to distinguish between friend and foe. If they rushed down rashly, they would only destroy the Western Army. But we can't just wait here. Are we just going to watch them die? If the emperor finds out who is responsible, I'm afraid it will not be good for the general. One word, wait. Sabusu's face was cold. Wait for what? The deputy generals around him were puzzled. Sabusu wanted to cultivate these trusted subordinates and did not intend to hide anything. He slowly explained, looking at the situation, I'm afraid that the Eastern Army is finished and the Western Army is doomed. If we rush down rashly, it is likely that we will have to kill each other. That's why we need to wait for a winner to be decided. At that time, even if the Golden Snake Camp wins, it will be an arrow at the end of its flight. Although the Northern Army does not have as many people as the Eastern and Western armies, they are all elite cavalry. Everyone is equipped with three-eyed, godly guns. When we rush down, we will be able to kill all the rebels like a hot knife through butter. The generals came to a sudden realization and looked at the general with admiration. General, You really have a good plan? However, there were still people who were worried and said, the commander of the West Army, Fei Yanggu, is the trusted aide of the commander-in-chief of the three armies, Yulu. If we really do nothing and let the West Army be slaughtered, Yulu will definitely report to the commander-in-chief in the future. At that time, even if we destroy the Golden Snake Camp, I'm afraid that not only will we not have any merit, but we will also attract trouble. Sabu Su's face was gloomy. He had obviously thought of this possibility. Waiting now is the best choice. If we rush down, it will provoke the Golden Snake Camp to fight to the death. If we stand here, we can continue to give the Golden Snake Camp a huge psychological pressure. If I'm not wrong, the Golden Snake Camp will retreat first. At that time, we can chase them to the north. Not only can we save the West Road Army, we can also destroy the Golden Snake Camp's main force without any effort. When the North Road Army appeared, Song Qingshu had already used his Qing Gong to enter the battlefield. As Sabu Su expected, more and more soldiers of the Golden Snake Camp noticed the Manchurian cavalry eyeing them like tigers watching their prey. Their expressions became hesitant. If it wasn't for the fact that they had just won a great victory and their morale was high, based on the Golden Snake Camp's previous temperament, they would have collapsed and fled in all directions. First Master, why don't we retreat first? Cheng Qingzhu, Situ Bulei, Xue Jian, and the others moved closer to Song Qingshu and tried to persuade him. Although Chen Jinan, Mu Jiansheng, and the others did not speak, their expressions clearly showed that they agreed to retreat. Retreat? Looking at Xiao Feng, Yang Yaojin, and the others who were still fighting, Song Qingshu said coldly, the reason why the Tatar cavalry doesn't dare to rush down now is because we are fighting with the West Road Army. If we retreat now, won't we immediately become the Tatar cavalry's live targets? How can we, who have two legs, outrun the four-legged beasts? When the time comes, won't we be completely annihilated? But if we don't retreat now, when the battle is over, we will still become the Tatar cavalry's live targets. Mu Jianxing's words were what most people were thinking. Song Qingshu flatly refused the suggestion to retreat. He said resolutely and decisively, if we escape now, we will definitely die. If we fight the Tatar cavalry to the death later, we will still have a chance of survival. Situ Bulei hesitated for a while, but in the end, he still gritted his teeth and said, First Master, you have not seen the power of these northern land cavalry. Every one of them is equipped with a three-eyed godly gun. When they're charging, they fire together, which is even more domineering than the Mongolian cavalry. Before we even come into contact with them, we have already suffered heavy losses. Not to mention that they have the geographical advantage right now. When they charge down from the hillside, we will definitely not be able to withstand them. Situ Bulei used to serve in the world-renowned Guaning Iron Cavalry. Naturally, he knew that the Manchurian Qing cavalry was intrepid. Now that they had absorbed the advantages of the Ming dynasty's firearms, they were like a tiger that had grown wings. In just a few words, he clearly understood the opponent's advantage. How could Song Qingshu not know this? But he was even more clear that if he gave the order to retreat now, it would be a complete defeat. What awaited the Golden Snake Camp was only complete annihilation. There was no other ending. But if they did not retreat with the firearms and geographical advantage, what awaited the Golden Snake Camp would still be complete annihilation. The only difference was that if they stayed and fought to the death, they could still drag some down with them. But what was the point of that? The leaders of the Golden Snake Camp surrounded Song Qingshu, anxiously waiting for his decision. In fact, if it was not for the prestige that Song Qingshu had inconceivably and effortlessly destroyed Tu Hai's 30,000-strong army, they might have already taken their men and retreated by now. Song Qingshu was also very conflicted. He raised his head to look at the entire battlefield. Although the people of the Golden Snake Camp were still fighting to the death, their movements were obviously much more hesitant. He knew that if he did not make a decision soon, the morale of the Golden Snake Camp would probably collapse. Prince Song, you have done your best this time. But now the situation is beyond the reach of human strength. It is better to retreat as soon as possible. As the saying goes, where there is life, there is hope. At this time, the women also came down from the foot of the mountain. Seeing Song Qingshu's dejected expression, Huang Rong could not help but console him. Song, First Master, I have already investigated the reason for the sudden appearance of the Tatar Northern Army. Not only did Meng Bofiai not delay and obstruct the Northern Army according to the agreed plan, but he deliberately led them here. Xia Qingqing's words were actually more for the others to hear. She wanted them to understand that the impending defeat was not because of Song Qingshu, but because of Meng Bofiai and the others' interference. Song Qingshu looked gratefully at Xia Qingqing. He knew that she was doing this to help him, but he knew in his heart that failure was a failure. History would only remember the final victor. Even if he had drowned the Eastern Army and led the Western Army into the trap, it would be useless. Back then, Guan Yu had drowned 7 armies and shocked Huaxia. In the end, he was defeated in Maichen. Later generations immediately doubted his ability as a commander. Zhuge Liang had been a brilliant strategist all his life, but in the end, his northern expedition was in vain. He only received the evaluation of adapting to changes is not his forte. Chapter 5:22. Don't worry, I have a way to deal with Sabu Su's cavalry. Song Qingshu threw out these words and flew to the top of a tower in a flash without caring about the reaction of the crowd. He circulated his internal energy and used the lion's roar to spread his voice throughout the valley. Brothers, listen to me. In the current situation, we will die if we fight, and we will also die if we run. Why don't we fight the Tatars to the end? Everyone, please fight to the death. The Tatars' cavalry will be handled by Song Mao alone. Regardless of success or failure, Song Mao will stay behind to cover the retreat of the brothers. I will not leave before any of you. Song Qingshu was worried that the people of Golden Snake Camp would not be able to withstand the pressure. Once someone started to escape, the situation would be irreversible. Therefore, he promised to stay behind to cover the retreat. In this world, there were many commanders who let their soldiers fight to the death while they quietly slipped away. Naturally, the soldiers did not have the determination to fight to the death. It could be said that Song Qingshu was the only one who risked his life to personally cover the retreat of the ordinary soldiers. Although the people of Golden Snake Camp did not think that he could stop the 8,000 cavalry by himself, Song Qingshu's prestige had risen to an unprecedented level. Hearing his words, they were willing to gamble with him. Song Qingshu's internal energy was so vigorous that even though the battle cries in the valley shook the sky, his voice still reached everyone's ears. Even Sabu Su and the others on the mountain heard it clearly. Immediately, a burst of laughter burst out. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Sabu Su did not know whether to laugh or cry. He had heard of Song Qingshu's reputation and knew that he was known as the #1 expert of the Manchurian Qing. But in front of his 8,000 cavalry, even the #1 expert in the world would be trampled into meat paste. On the other side, the women did not have the time to care about whether Song Qingshu could stop the 8,000 cavalry or not. Instead, their expressions changed when they heard his promise to stay behind to cover the retreat. They knew very well that with Song Qingshu's martial arts and lightness kung fu, he could come and go as he pleased on the battlefield. It wouldn't be difficult for him to keep his life. However, he had promised to stay behind and bring up the rear. The situation was completely different. What awaited him was only death. If he didn't keep his promise and fled halfway, his life would be preserved, but his reputation would be ruined. There would be no place for him in the world in the future, and it could be said that he would rather die than live. Young Master Song, are you crazy? As soon as Song Qingshu came down from the high platform, the surrounding women surrounded him and asked him anxiously. Although Chen Jinan and the others didn't say anything, the expressions on their faces showed that they agreed with their judgment. Trust me, I'm a man who is good at creating miracles. Song Qingshu flashed a smile at the women and went to Chen Jinan and Mu Jianxing. Head Leader Chun, Duke Mu, please take your men and set fire to all the tents in the valley, as well as the provisions and supplies left behind by the Eastern Army. The bigger the fire, the better. You must do it as fast as possible. Chen Jinan and Mu Jianxing looked at each other. Although they didn't know what he was up to, the calm expression on his face made them choose to believe him subconsciously. Okay, Chen Mu, we'll definitely not let you down. Seeing that the two of them had left with their men, Song Qingshu went to Situ Bulei, Shui Jian, and Cheng Qingzhu. Please take some men to reinforce King Xiao and the Fourth Lady and eliminate the remnants of the Western Army as soon as possible. Situ Bulei's life's honor and disgrace had long been tied to Song Qingshu. Seeing that Song Qingshu had made a decision, he naturally obeyed him subconsciously. Although Shui Jian and Cheng Qingzhu could be considered to have a deep relationship with Song Qingshu, their relationship was not as close as Situ Bulei's. After hesitating for a long time, they finally nodded. Okay, we trust you. Watching these people leave, Song Qingshu went to Xia Qingqing again. Yu, take your men and wait for further orders at the foot of the mountain. Xia Qingqing's face turned slightly pale. She knew very well that when the cavalry on the mountain rushed down, her men and horses would be the first to bear the brunt. However, when she heard Song Qingshu's words earlier, it was clear that he had the will to die. She sighed faintly in her heart. In any case, if he dies, I won't live alone. What's the difference if I die earlier or later? She nodded and did not say anything. She ordered her men and horses to hurry to the foot of the mountain. Song Qingshu looked deeply at her back. He knew that she was worried, but he didn't say anything. He turned around and looked at Zhou Zhiruo. Zhiruo, your Amei sect has been preaching for 1,000 years. You can't just stop here because of me. Take your men and withdraw from the valley. Zhou Zhiruo's face turned red. She said angrily, Why are you willing to let Qingqing accompany you? But you want me to leave? Song Qingshu was stunned. What kind of situation is this? Why do I still have the time to be jealous for no reason? He hastily explained, I'm just worried that you'll become a sinner of a Mei faction. Zhou Zhiruo's expression softened. She took off the iron ring on her finger and turned around to hand it to Jing Xian. Jing Xian Shiji, if I meet with misfortune this time, Shiji will be the new head of the Amei sect. Head Shiji, you must not do that. Jing Xian had always been kind. Seeing that Zhou Zhiruo had the thought of entrusting her to her, she quickly advised. Zhou Zhiruo shook her head and said calmly, I've made up my mind. Shiji, you don't have to do it anymore. This time, because of your selfishness, you have put your fellow Shiji in danger. This is already a big mistake. How can you make another mistake and let the Amei sect end here? I asked Shiji to prioritize the Amei sect and quickly leave with the disciples. Jing Xian also understood this. She looked at the frightened Amei disciples behind her, gritted her teeth, and said, Okay, I will leave with them first. Head Shiji, please take care. When the Amei disciples slowly left, Zhou Zhao turned around and looked at Song Qingshu. She smiled mischievously and said, Now you have nothing to say, right? Song Qingshu could only smile bitterly. When he looked at Ajio again, Ajio quickly said, My life's goal is tied to Song Lang. If Song Lang meets with misfortune, how can I live alone? Song Qingshu smiled faintly and reached out to hold the two women's hands. There was no need for words. Seeing the three of them being so close, Yelu Nancian and Huang Rong were embarrassed. Noticing Song Qingshu's eyes on them, Yelu Nancian quickly said, I won't leave either. As soon as the words left her mouth, she felt it was a bit ambiguous. Yelu Nancian quickly explained, Don't think too much. I'm not doing this for you. It's just that King Xiao and Brother Wang are here. I won't escape alone. Ajio couldn't help but smile. We're not thinking too much. You're the one who's feeling guilty. Yelu Nancian was very embarrassed. She bit her lips and said, I'll go find Brother Wang first. Then she jumped on her horse and left. Unlike the other girls, half of Yelu Nancian's skills were on horseback. Now that the West Army's defeat was certain, no one was worried that she would be in danger. Huang Rong was deep in thought. This Song Qingshu is really good at flirting with women. Even the widow of the former Golden Snake King is his concubine, and this princess of Liao seems to have a good impression of him. Guo Furen, what about you? Song Qingshu's voice interrupted Huang Rong's thoughts. Huang Rong raised her head and smiled. I want to stay and see how young master plans to turn the tide. Seeing her smile like a flower, Song Qingshu's heart moved. He couldn't help but tease. If Furen dies here with Song Mao, Hero Guo will be distressed. Huang Rong couldn't help but spit. She turned her head and pretended she didn't hear his words. Song Qingshu's expression also changed. It turned out that the hands of the two women beside him had coincidentally pinched the soft flesh of his waist. At this time, the battle in the valley was almost over. The Western army was almost completely wiped out. Most of them actually died from killing each other, and only half of them died at the hands of the Golden Snake Camp. But even so, the people of the Golden Snake Camp were already exhausted, with less than 30% of their strength left. Chapter 5:23. Feeling the strange movement of the Manchurian cavalry, the people at the foot of the mountain couldn't help but become restless. Song Qingshu looked around. Tiandi Hui's Mu Palace had already ignited all the tents and provisions. Even from a distance, he could feel the steaming hot air. The Qing army on the mountain also noticed this unforeseen event. The deputy general next to Sabusu exclaimed in surprise, "Are they going to use fire to stop us?" Sabusu was also puzzled. After carefully watching for a while, he couldn't help but laugh. I thought that the Golden Snake Camp was able to destroy the Eastern and Western armies, so this commander-in-chief has some ability. I didn't expect that in the chaos he would make such a stupid move. He wants to use fire to stop our cavalry? Haha. When the fire spreads, it seems that the Golden Snake Camp's own soldiers will be burned to death. We don't need to do anything. Pass down my order, tell everyone to wait. Without my order, no one is allowed to rush down. The surrounding generals all roared with laughter, one after another mocking the commander-in-chief at the foot of the mountain. After receiving the order, all the cavalry calmly stayed where they were, waiting for the idiots of the Golden Snake Camp to burn themselves to death. Prince Song, what should we do now? Before long, I'm afraid everyone will suffocate to death. Huang Rong was also a resourceful person, but the current situation made her feel helpless. Her only hope was that Song Qingshu really had a way. Although she thought about it and couldn't think of any way to turn the tide, she still had a faint hope in her heart. Huang Rong's face was originally full of peach blossoms, but under the illumination of the surrounding fire, she looked even more tender and beautiful. Song Qingshu couldn't help but stare blankly. Seemingly noticing his gaze, Huang Rong panicked and couldn't help but lightly cough to remind him. Song Qingshu finally came back to his senses and couldn't help but laugh inwardly. At this time, he was still in the mood to appreciate a beauty. Could this be the legendary bearing of a famous scholar, the romantic of the Wei and Jin dynasties? At this time, the rest of the people also came over and looked at him with expectant faces. "Don't worry, leave it to me." Song Qingshu responded with a confident smile and then ordered, "You guys restrain your subordinates. In a moment, when I make this gesture, retreat. When I make this gesture, come back," and so on. Everyone was confused and didn't know what he was going to do. Song Qingshu didn't explain and flashed to a sentry tower in front. Not only the people of the Golden Snake Camp, but also the Qing soldiers on the mountain also stared at him curiously to see what he was going to do. Song Qingshu took a deep breath, looked up at the sky, and muttered something. Unfortunately, they were too far away, and no one could hear what he was saying. After a while, Song Qingshu's eyes flashed. He slowly raised his hands, and a deep voice was transmitted to the ears of everyone at the foot of the mountain. "Wind, rise! Qingshu," Huang Huang said of Song, and Huang of mountain. A trace of disappointment flashed through Huang Rong's eyes. When the Jin soldiers besieged Bianliang, the northern Song emperor had no choice but to pin his hopes on the Taoist master. He opened an altar and asked the celestial soldiers and generals to come to the human world to help them. Huang Rong couldn't help but feel disappointed. When the Jin soldiers besieged Bianliang, the emperor of the northern Song dynasty had no choice but to put his hope on the Taoist master. He opened an altar and invited the soldiers and generals to help them. Everyone knew the result. The whole royal family was wiped out. The emperor went on a hunt in the north, and countless imperial concubines and princesses were defiled. Is he crazy? Huang Rong didn't know why she was so disappointed. The Qing soldiers on the mountain also heard Song Qingshu's words. After a moment of silence, there was a burst of laughter. Is he crazy? Does he think he's an immortal? That the wind will blow whenever he wants? That's right. What's more, in this situation, what's the use of the wind? The Eastern and Western armies are really pigs. They were defeated by such a person. At the foot of the mountain, the people of the Golden Snake Camp were also silent. If it weren't for the magic performance of Song Qingshu before, they might have started a curse. Zhou Zhuo and Zhu Yui looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Sister Zhou, you've been with Brother Song for the longest time. Do you know what he's doing? Ajio couldn't help asking. I've known him for a long time, but I've only known him for a few months. Maybe I don't know him as well as you do. Of course, Zhou Zhuo wouldn't say this to Ajio. She shook her head and said, I don't know either. Don't worry. Prince Song has always been unexpected. He has his reasons for doing this. Yilu Nancian came back from the battlefield. Looking at the worried faces of the two girls, she couldn't help but comfort them. Ah Ju smiled and said, I didn't expect that we don't know Brother Song as well as Miss Yilu. Yilu Nancian held her breath and said in a hurry, That's because you're too worried. Wind. Song Qingshu's powerful voice once again resounded through the entire valley. Unfortunately, the valley was filled with raging flames and was unbelievably hot. There was no sign of wind at all. Hearing the laughter of the Qing soldiers on the mountain, the morale of the Golden Snake Camp was even lower. Wind. Song Qingshu's voice sounded again. This time, it was a few octaves louder than before. Even the Qing soldiers on the mountain were startled. There's really wind. When the morale of the Golden Snake Camp hit rock bottom, someone shouted. Everyone couldn't help but be shaken and looked around. There's really wind. Zhou Zhuo was different from her usual self. She excitedly grabbed Ajio's arm and jumped up. Ajio wasn't much better. Biting his lips, he nodded his head and couldn't say anything for a moment. Zhou Zhuo suddenly found that although there was no lack of good relationships among the people present, but at this moment of life and death, only Ajio and Qingqing were of the same mind. Thinking of the times when she couldn't help but be jealous, Zhou Zhuo became absent-minded. Humph! At this time, we're united against a foreign enemy. Of course, we can ignore internal conflicts. When the crisis is over, we still have to fight. Zhou Zhuo was not an ordinary person and quickly sorted out her thoughts. Huang Rong, who was at the side, did not think so much. She was just shocked that Song Qingshu could really summon the wind. Even though it was just a gentle breeze, and she did not know what effect it would have in the upcoming battle, it was an indisputable fact that Song Qingshu could summon the wind. Since ancient times, only Zhuge Liang could summon the wind, and that was just a legend. Who else could summon the wind like Song Qingshu? Was he an immortal or a monster? Huang Rong was a bit stunned. At the same time, Situ Boulay and the others had noticed the secret signal that Song Qingshu quietly made. They hurriedly organized their subordinates and slowly retreated out of the valley. Seeing that the Golden Snake Camp finally moved, Sabusu's eyes darkened, and he said in a low voice, Pass down the order. The whole army is ready to charge. At this time, the fire in the valley is very big. If we rush down, it is inevitable that there will be heavy casualties. A deputy general said. Sabusu snorted coldly. If we sit back and watch the Golden Snake Camp calmly retreat, all our previous efforts will be in vain. But now the wind is really rising. That person can't really be supernatural, can he? Another deputy general said with fear. Sabusu coldly looked at him and said, If you continue to mislead people, don't blame me for punishing you according to military law. Yes. Coming into contact with Sabusu's sharp eyes, the deputy general couldn't help but feel a chill and immediately shut up. Chapter 5:24. As soon as he gave the order, the northern cavalry, who had been eyeing them covetously, finally moved. They rushed down the mountain in a dense mass. The rumbling of the hooves terrified the retreating Golden Snake Battalion. They all looked up at the figure on the sentry tower in despair. "Great wind, rise!" Song Qing-shu raised both of his hands again, as if there was a deity in the dark who had heard his summon. His voice had just fallen. The gentle breeze in the valley just a moment ago. In a split second, a violent gale kicked up. The sand and pebbles flew everywhere. The strong wind made it difficult for people to open their eyes. Because the charging Manchurian cavalry was facing the wind, they were affected the most. Each and every one of them swayed left and right. The entire formation was thrown into disorder. The Golden Snake Battalion had already received the order. They all took out their weapons and got into formation, ready to fight. At this moment, they were completely different from before. It was as if they had been injected with adrenaline. Some of them could not help but roar. Their morale suddenly rose to the peak. How was this possible? Sabu secretly complained. Could there really be someone who could control the power of nature? But soon he threw the sudden weakness and fear to the back of his mind. He knew that once the cavalry charged, if he suddenly gave the order to stop, the rear army would collide with the front army and die without a fight. At this moment, the arrow on the bowstring had to be released. Even though they were facing the wind and the strength of the cavalry was greatly reduced, Sabu had no choice but to let the cavalry continue to charge down. He hoped to break through the motley crowd in one go. The Northern Army was indeed an elite force that had been stationed in the northern frontier for many years. The initial panic was quickly controlled by Sabu. Although they all narrowed their eyes, they still continued to charge down the mountain. Lightning. Song Qing-shu's mysterious voice sounded again. Soon a thick and long lightning flashed across the sky. Under the dazzling light, the figure on the sentry tower suddenly looked like a demon. Thunder. Very quickly, Song Qing-shu spat out these two words clearly. Following that, deafening thunderclaps reverberated through the valley, immediately suppressing the sound of the Qing troops charging. The Qing army finally fell into chaos. In this era, Song Qing-shu's performance was really shocking. He could control wind, fire, thunder, and lightning by himself. If he was not a demon, then what was he? In addition, the fierce wind in the valley, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. Many warhorses were frightened and could no longer be controlled by their riders. Once the front army was in chaos, the whole charging camp was also in chaos. Sabusu's heart was bleeding as he watched the cavalrymen fall into a mess. He had been in the army for decades, but he had never encountered such a stupid situation. He had the upper hand, but he had lost half of his men before the two armies had even crossed swords. Sabu looked around and finally felt a little relieved. After all, these were his elites. Although they had encountered so many unexpected situations, nearly half of the cavalry had cleverly avoided the chaos in front. I don't care if you're a god or a ghost. This time, I'll make sure you die under my cavalry. Song Qing-shu's ghostly performance made Sabusu feel a little scared. However, he had been on the battlefield for many years, and his murderous aura was very strong. Very soon, he became ruthless and commanded the remaining cavalry to continue rushing down the mountain. Although the cavalrymen under his command were scared to death, their commanding general was usually very strict. In addition, they were charging down the mountain. Once the momentum started, they couldn't stop even if they wanted to, so they could only bite the bullet and follow their commanding general down the mountain. Seeing that they were getting closer and closer to the Golden Snake camp, Sabu licked his lips and roared, "Raise the spears! Prepare to shoot!" Seeing the Tatar cavalry in the distance raise the black, three-eyed, godly guns, the Golden Snake camp at the foot of the mountain could not help but start a riot despite their high morale. Song Qing-shu also noticed the Manchurian cavalry's actions. He knew that once they were within firing range, the three-eyed, godly guns in his hands would fire a few volleys and the Golden Snake camp would suffer heavy losses. However, he was already prepared. He raised his hands to the sky and roared, "Rain come!" If they had heard Song Qingshu's roar before, whether it was the Golden Snake Camp or the Manchurian cavalry, they would only laugh at him as if he was a lunatic. However, the series of events that happened just now that seemed like a dream, no one dared to look down on his words. Sabu Su's heart skipped a beat and turned ice cold. If he really summoned the rain, the three-eyed, godly guns that his cavalry was most proud of would become mere decorations. In addition, there was a lot of mud in the valley. Once it rained, there would be mud puddles everywhere. It would be a fatal trap for the charging cavalry. God, I beg you, please don't rain. Sabu Su, who had always disrespected ghosts and gods, could not help but pray at this moment. Unfortunately, God seemed to be standing on Song Qingshu's side. Very soon, Sabu Su felt an ice-cold water droplet hit his cheek. It's over, it's over, it's all over. Sabu Su frantically ordered, regardless of whether the enemy had entered the firing range or not. Quickly shoot, shoot. Unfortunately, the rain came faster than expected. In the beginning, it was sparse raindrops the size of beans, but very soon it became a torrential downpour. The three-eyed, godly guns in the hands of the Manchurian cavalry had only fired a few shots when the gunpowder was soaked by the rain. The three-eyed, godly gun suddenly became a fire stick. What was even more frightening was that the rain was too heavy. The ground became soft and muddy at a speed visible to the naked eye. Row after row of cavalry charged forward. Their horses lost their front hooves and fell head first. At this time, the Manchurian army finally collapsed. No one was willing to continue charging down. Those who fell off their horses ran back. A few lucky ones who did not fall off hurriedly turned their horses around and ran back up the mountain. Coincidentally, they collided with the people behind them who could not stop in time. The cavalry, which was full of murderous intent not long ago, suddenly became a pot of porridge. In an instant, they lost their fighting strength. This performance of mine is comparable to Zhuge Liang and Guan Yun. Song Qingshu finally let out a sigh of relief. He could not help but think in a showy manner. But very quickly, he was stunned to find that the entire Golden Snake battalion below seemed to be dumbfounded. He could not help but roar loudly in amusement. What are you all standing there for? Charge! Song Qingshu was like a reincarnated immortal in everyone's eyes. His voice immediately ignited the morale of the entire Golden Snake battalion. Everyone, whether it was his own troops or the subordinates of the other leaders, or Yang Miaozhen's Redcoat army, or the Jianghu sects that came to help, each and every one of them seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. With wide strides, they charged toward the chaotic Manchurian cavalry. General, leave quickly. If you don't leave now, it will be too late. On the mountainside, a group of soldiers pulled Sabu Su and urged him anxiously. To think that a grand army of 8,000 elites was actually defeated by one person. Sabu Su's face was haggard. He glanced at the person at the foot of the mountain. Gritting his teeth, he pulled out the saber from his waist and killed a few soldiers who tried to persuade him to escape. Those who dare to say retreat again, behead. Sabu Su said fiercely. Although the majority of the army was in chaos, their strength still existed. As long as they could stabilize the chaotic situation as soon as possible, they would be able to occupy the high ground and still have the strength to fight. Chapter 525. As soon as Song Qingshu finished speaking, his figure rushed up the mountain like a wisp of smoke. Wherever he passed, the swords and blades scattered on the ground seemed to be controlled by countless invisible threads, rising into the air and surrounding Song Qingshu. From afar, Song Qingshu seemed to have grown a pair of wings made up of countless swords and blades. With Song Qingshu's lightness skill, it didn't take long for him to come into contact with the Qing army's vanguard. Sabu Su's cavalry had already collapsed. How could they organize an effective counterattack? Wherever Song Qingshu went, blood splattered everywhere. The Qing soldiers who tried to block his way fell one by one. No one would be able to remain calm when they saw their companions being chopped up like chives. Very soon, the surrounding Qing soldiers were all terrified. No one was willing to step forward to stop him. They subconsciously moved to the side to hide. There was only one broad road between Song Qing-shu and Sabusu. "Hurry up and stop him!" A deputy general beside, Sabusu roared in horror. But now that the entire army had collapsed, who would care about him? Sabusu's reaction was much calmer than the deputy general beside him. He held the saber at his waist and watched coldly as the wings of death formed by the saber and the sword drew closer. The last thought in his life was a long sigh. "It's a pity that I don't know how he can summon wind and rain. Sabusu is dead. From now on, anyone who puts down their weapons and surrenders will be spared." Behind Song Qing-shu floated countless sabers and swords dripping with blood. Illuminated by the flashing lightning and rumbling thunder, Song Qing-shu looked like a demonic god. One after another, the Qing soldiers who were closest to him dropped their weapons and crouched on the ground, shivering. Since someone had taken the lead, more and more Qing soldiers chose to surrender. In the end, only a few of the soldiers at the back managed to escape. About half of the soldiers died in the chaos, and the other half chose to surrender. The news of the annihilation of the three armies quickly spread back to the Central Army. Yulu walked out of the commander's camp alone and stared blankly at the vast green mountains for a long time. Then, he gathered all the deputy generals for an emergency meeting and announced the immediate withdrawal of the army. "Marshal, you mustn't do that. We've suffered heavy losses this time. If we don't make any contributions, we might not be able to escape punishment when we return to the capital." "Yes, Marshal. Even if the other three armies were completely annihilated, the Golden Snake Camp must have suffered heavy losses. We still have 40,000 people. It's not that we don't have the power to fight. I'm willing to lead 5,000 elite soldiers to attack the base camp of the rebels." The generals in the commander's tent were in an uproar as they expressed their opinions. Now that the Golden Snake Camp has won several great victories, their morale is at its peak. In contrast, our army's morale has already been reduced by 80%. There's no benefit in staying. Yulu raised his hand to stop everyone's discussion and made the final decision. "No need to say anything more. I have already decided that when we return to the capital and the emperor blames me, I will bear the responsibility alone." Looking at the general's unwilling eyes as they left, Yulu sighed, his brows full of worry. This time, the four armies of the southern expedition cooperated with each other from a distance. The Golden Snake Camp could appear and disappear unpredictably. Every time they attacked, they chose the time when the other armies were unable to rescue them. "I absolutely don't believe that there isn't a spy in the court. If we continue to fight, I'm afraid that even these 40,000 people will be lost here. It's better to return to the capital and secretly report to the emperor first before making a decision." Yulu was worthy of being a famous general who had experienced hundreds of battles. Very quickly, he keenly discovered the biggest reason for this defeat. He had saved the effective strength for the Manchurian Qing. Unfortunately, no matter how much he calculated, he never would have thought that the emperor in the capital was the biggest spy. The news of the Qing army's retreat quickly spread to the Golden Snake Camp. The Golden Snake Camp suddenly burst into thunderous cheers. Although the first three battles were won by the weaker side and were fought very beautifully, everyone understood that they had been taking a risk by stepping on a tightrope. The Tartars could lose, but they could not afford to lose. If they were the slightest bit careless, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. The leaders who had been sent outside to harass and intercept the other armies led their subordinates back to the base camp. The way they looked at Song Qing-shu changed. With just a few thousand men and horses, he easily destroyed the 30,000 elites of Tu Hai's Eastern Army. After that, he destroyed the 25,000 men of Fei Yonggu's Western Army without stopping. Finally, when they met the elite cavalry of the Northern Army in a hurry, they defeated them almost without any casualties and even captured nearly half of their men. Tu Hai and Fei Yonggu were famous generals of the present age. The Golden Snake Camp had dealt with them many times. Even when the Golden Snake Camp was at its peak, they were still a headache for them. Now, Song Qing-shu had actually led a few old and weak soldiers to easily defeat the Manchurian Qing's 100,000 elite soldiers. This was already enough to make people prostrate themselves in admiration. However, what shocked everyone was the last battle. The news of Song Qingshu performing magic on the high platform, summoning the wind and rain, and destroying 8,000 northern goblin cavalry with his own strength was spread by those who were present that day. Very soon, everyone in the Golden Snake camp knew about this matter. It was inevitable to add oil to the fire. Now, in the hearts of all the soldiers of the Golden Snake camp, their new Golden Snake King was not immortal, but a reincarnation of an immortal. Not to mention these ordinary soldiers, even the mountain leaders of the Golden Snake camp were filled with respect and fear. They did not even dare to look at Song Qingshu directly. Needless to say, the few leaders who had originally supported Song Qingshu, Xia Qingqing, Situ Buolei, Shui Jian, and Cheng Qingzhu were completely dead set on him. The few leaders who had previously remained neutral, Zhao Weiner, Rong Kai, Nie Tianfeng, and Zheng Qiun, all used the most solemn etiquette to express their loyalty to Song Qingshu. Seeing his former colleagues kneeling down, Sha Tongtian, who had been disagreeing with Song Qingshu, felt his legs go limp, and he also knelt down. Sitting on the main seat and looking at the people who were kneeling down respectfully, Song Qingshu could not help but feel a little emotional. Previously, when he had disguised himself as Kangxi, the scene in the throne room was much bigger than this, but it did not make him feel as emotional. Because those people were kneeling down to Kangxi, and now, these people were kneeling down to him. In the past, when I read about Xiang Yu returning from the Battle of Jiulu after defeating the Qin army, all the feudal vassals trembled and bowed down to him, honoring him as the great general. I did not expect that I would also be able to experience such an addiction. Song Qingshu was feeling a little proud, but his expression suddenly changed. Ba ba ba. What is there to learn about that unlucky Xiang Yu? In the end, he lost his wife and committed suicide in the Wu River. Bad luck, bad luck. Cough, cough. Song Qingshu was startled and looked toward the source of the sound. He found Huang Rong sitting there with a serious expression, looking straight ahead. The little lady had good intentions. Song Qingshu smiled slightly, but he understood that now was the time to establish his authority. He was not in a hurry to let the people below the stage rise. Instead, he glanced around and asked coldly, "Where are Chu Honglu and Meng Bofiai?" The people below the stage looked at each other in dismay. Only then did they realize that these two people had not come to the meeting hall. They all knew very well that of these two people, one had made a military pledge, but Tu Hai's army had escaped in defeat. The other was even worse, directly leading Sibusu's northern army to Song Qingshu's main force, trying to kill them with a borrowed knife. How would they dare to return now? Master Sha, you have always been familiar with them. Tell me where they have gone. Song Qingshu said with a faint smile. The fat on Sha Tongtian's face trembled, and he hurriedly said, "First Master must be joking. I'm not familiar with these two traitors at all." Seeing that Song Qingshu was still staring at him, Sha Tongtian gritted his teeth and continued. These two traitors conspired against the law and intended to harm First Master. Unexpectedly, First Master was possessed by the god of war and defeated the Qing army. Naturally, they did not have the guts to come back to accept their death. We do not know where they have escaped to. However, most of their subordinates admire First Master's authority and are unwilling to flee with them. Therefore, except for some of their trusted subordinates, the rest have returned to Golden Snake Camp. Hearing Sha Tongtian speak in such detail, like beans pouring out of a bamboo tube, Song Qingshu understood that he was handing over his allegiance. When his words reached the ears of Chu Honglu and Meng Bofiai, the two sides would naturally become irreconcilable. All right, get up. We will let these two traitors roam free for a few days. Now, our top priority is to pursue and attack. Song Qingshu walked to the sand table that had been prepared earlier, pointed to the whole territory of Shandong, and said, "The Tartars' army of 100,000 has been annihilated. Now, There are no usable soldiers within a radius of 1,000 miles. Every region has long been frightened by the news. Wherever our army goes, the prefectures and counties will certainly surrender at the mere sight of the wind. In the following period of time, we will need you to attack cities and seize territory. How dare we not obey? All the leaders were overjoyed. When had Golden Snake Camp ever been so awe-inspiring? Even at their peak, they had only occupied a few surrounding small counties. Now the whole of Shandong was in the bag. Our strength is limited. We can't hold too many places even if we occupy them. Let's use the Yellow River as the boundary. Within half a month, I want the prefectures and counties south of the Yellow River to belong to our Golden Snake Camp. Situ Boulay, you will lead the troops to attack Jining. Chief Shui, you will lead the troops to attack Zhangqiu. After Song Qingshu had arranged their respective tasks, he suddenly emphasized in a deep voice, I know that many of you here came from the Lulan Forest. Perhaps you will not be able to change your old habits in a short period of time. Therefore, I will make it clear in advance that we cannot hole up in the mountains and be bandits for the rest of our lives. Even if we have to rob, it will be the Tartars who have invaded our Han people's territory. Therefore, in this attack on the prefectures and prefectures, you are not allowed to rob any common people's belongings. You are not allowed to molest women. Those who kill will be executed, those who injure will be punished, and those who steal will be punished. If anyone dares to violate this, I don't care who he is, he will be severely punished. Hearing Song Qingshu's murderous words, all the leaders were startled. But now that Song Qingshu's prestige was like the sun in the sky, no one had any objections. Seeing Song Qingshu imitating Liu Bang's 3 rules, Huang Rong couldn't help but be startled. This man was really scheming something big. After all the leaders had received their orders and left, Xiao Feng stood up, cupped his fists, and said, Brother Song, since this matter is over, we will not stay for long. We will take our leave now. Song Qingshu hastily stood up and said, Brother Xiao, what are you talking about? This time, we were fortunate to have Brother Zhao's great help, allowing us to achieve a complete victory. I still haven't properly thanked you. How can I leave so soon? Xiao Feng couldn't help but smile bitterly. Brother Song, don't be modest. With Brother Song's ability, even without me, it would be easy for you to repel the enemy. What's more, we have been away from Liao for a long time. Now that Liao is surrounded by danger, it would be better for us to return as soon as possible. If not for someone like Brother Xiao leading us, how could we stimulate the fighting strength of those motley crew? This time, Brother Xiao can be said to have made great contributions, Song Qingshu hastily said. Chapter 5:26. As soon as Yelu Nancian spoke, everyone's ears perked up. The image of Song Qingshu calling the wind and summoning the rain at Fox Hill was too shocking, completely beyond the scope of human strength. Different from the ordinary Golden Snake Battalion soldiers, the people in the hall were all top figures in the world. After the initial shock, they had regained their senses and understood that Song Qingshu wasn't really a god. He must have used some kind of concealment technique, but they couldn't see through it. Song Qingshu smiled. Could it be that in the princess' heart, Song Mao can't really call the wind and summon the rain? Yelu Nancian couldn't help but roll her eyes. I'm not one of those ignorant commoners. Song Qingshu first smiled. Then his expression quickly changed. How much does the princess think this method of calling the wind and summoning the rain is worth? If this method can allow one to call the wind and summon the rain at will, then it is a priceless treasure. Yelu Nancian's face showed a hint of understanding, and she said apologetically, Nancian's question was too abrupt. Song Qingshu shook his head. In this great defeat of the Qing army, the princess also contributed. It's not a big deal to tell you, but as he changed the topic, everyone's hearts were in suspense. On one hand, they felt it was too abrupt to ask about such a secret, but on the other hand, they couldn't wait for Song Qingshu to quickly reveal the truth. Song Qing hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he sighed, "Forget it, I originally wanted to pretend to be a swindler a little longer, but this time, everyone helped me in my hour of need. Song Mao will remember this great kindness in my heart. If I keep it to myself, it would be too stingy." Hearing that he was about to reveal something, everyone in the hall couldn't help but sit up straight, listening attentively, afraid that they would miss a word. Song Qingshu paused, then continued. "Calling the wind and summoning the rain seems mysterious, but it is actually very simple. Does everyone remember what I did before I went up the stage?" The group of people in the hall looked at each other. At that time, everyone thought that they were in a desperate situation and their minds were in a mess. In addition, Song Qingshu had done a lot of things, so they couldn't remember which one was related to calling the wind and summoning the rain. Could it be that we're going to burn down the barracks? Huang Rong frowned and asked with uncertainty. "Madam is really meticulous. You've hit the nail on the head." Song Qingshu looked at her approvingly, causing Huang Rong to feel uneasy. Song Qingshu turned around and continued. "Everyone here is used to using swords and sabers. I'm sure you've often seen a phenomenon. Once the steam from hot water touches the cold surface of the saber, many tiny water droplets will condense on the blade, right?" Everyone nodded, but they were still puzzled. What does this have to do with calling the wind and summoning the rain? In essence, it's the same. Looking at the confused expressions on the faces of the top figures in the world, Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel superior in terms of intelligence. Sigh, he finally understood why so many people looked forward to transmigration. It felt really good to stand on the shoulders of giants. The people below were still waiting. Song Qingshu collected himself, cleared his throat, and continued to explain. The shape of Fox Slope is unique. There are mountain ridges on both sides, and there's a wide, deep valley in the middle. When the tents and rations in the valley are all set on fire, a large amount of hot air will surge into the air. When the hot air meets the cold air in the sky, it will condense into raindrops. This kind of special situation will often result in a rainstorm, accompanied by strong winds, lightning, and thunder. In the past, Zhuge Liang had ingeniously planned to lure Sima Yi and his son to the valley above and then attack with fire. Sima Yi himself had accepted his fate, but a sudden rainstorm had caused all of Zhuge Liang's plans to fail. In the end, a sudden rainstorm had ruined all of Zhuge Liang's plans. A general who doesn't understand astronomy, doesn't know about yin and yang, doesn't understand formations, and doesn't understand military tactics are mediocre. This was what Zhuge Liang had said himself. He must have calculated the weather beforehand when he set up the ambush in the upper valley. In the end, God played a joke on him. He had clearly calculated that there would be no rain, but there was a heavy downpour. As the saying goes, it's easy to know the heavens, but it's hard to go against them. That blow to Zhuge Liang was fatal. Not long after, he died of illness in Wuzhong Plain. It had been a tragedy for thousands of years. Regardless of whether this was a historical novel or a historical novel, the most important thing was, why did it suddenly rain in Upper Valley? Many meddlesome scholars in later generations studied this question and finally solved the mystery of the sudden rain in Upper Valley with the help of the scientific system. The types of rain included frontal rain, typhoon rain, topographic rain, and convective rain. The situation in Upper Valley at that time just happened to meet the conditions of convective rain. Upper Valley's entrance was narrow, and the hinterland was wide. The two sides were high, and the middle was low. This kind of terrain was not conducive to air circulation. Once there was a fire in the valley, the temperature began to rise. The air close to the ground rapidly expanded and rose while the cold air above and around it shrank and sank, forming a strong convective wind in the valley. Therefore, there would be a strong wind. When a large amount of hot air from the bottom of the valley rose to a certain height, the water vapor in the air condensed into clouds due to the lower temperature. In addition, a large amount of smoke and dust produced by the burning of firewood rose into the sky with the air, providing an ideal condensation point for the water vapor to condense, thus accelerating the condensation of water vapor. The small water droplets in the clouds collided and merged with each other, gradually growing in size and eventually leading to a heavy downpour. At that time, when the Golden Snake Camp in Fox Slope was in a desperate situation, Song Qingshu happened to think of Zhuge Liang and happened to think of this story. Therefore, he gave it his all and tried his best. Fortunately, God did not disappoint those who persevered and successfully recreated the scene in Upper Valley. The characteristic of convective rain was that it was accompanied by strong winds that could uproot a tree with a diameter of 50 centimeters. It was accompanied by lightning, thunder, and sometimes hail. Song Qingshu was not stupid. Since he knew about these characteristics beforehand, there was no reason for him not to make use of them. That was why he later created the illusion that he could summon wind, thunder, and rain in front of everyone. At that time, Song Qingshu seemed to be chanting an incantation on the high platform, but in reality, he was not doing anything. He was just anxiously waiting for the arrival of the convective rain. It's as simple as setting a fire. You're not fooling us, are you? Yang Miaozhen looked at Song Qingshu with a doubtful expression. Song Qingshu was jolted back to his senses by her voice. He could not help but smile when he heard that. Of course, it's not that simple. What's more important is the terrain of Fox Slope. If you set a fire on an open plain, it'll be very difficult to succeed. Don't lie to me. I'll look for a valley to try it when I get back. Yang Miaozhen's straightforward words made everyone in the hall smile. Chen Jinan could not help but sigh. Young master, you're really extraordinary. You actually told us such a shocking secret. If I were you, I'm afraid I wouldn't be as open-minded as young master. Chen Jinan's words resonated with everyone in the hall. In this world, keeping one's own secrets was the truth. Even the martial arts of ordinary Jianghu sects were not willing to be known by outsiders, let alone a technique that could summon wind and rain. In this world, what did it mean for a person to be able to summon wind and rain? In the past, Zhang Jiao had used some half-truths and half-lies to gather 1 million Yellow Turban Army soldiers. Today's White Lotus Society had also used some miraculous techniques to gather thousands of believers. Given Song Qingshu's previous miracles, even if he directly said he was the reincarnation of a deity and had the ability to communicate with ghosts and gods, there were probably a lot of people who believed in him. In the future, he would probably be able to gather thousands of believers. However, he chose to tell them everything. How could the people in the hall not be shocked? Song Qingshu smiled. Everyone here is a friend who has gone through thick and thin with Song Mao. Naturally, there's nothing to hide. Besides, I don't want everyone's impression of me to be that of a swindler. Everyone in the hall could not help but laugh. Yang Miaozhen cupped her fists and said, Brother Song is really bold. Good. From today onwards, Brother Song is my friend and also the friend of the Red Coat Army. Xiao Feng also laughed heartily. If Brother Song comes to Liao in the future, I will definitely welcome you with open arms. Tian Di Hui, Mu Palace, and the others also expressed their goodwill. After a series of pleasant and heated discussions, all the powers that came to help came to bid farewell to Song Qingshu. Brother Song, if you have the chance to come to Liao in the future, I will definitely drink 1,000 bowls of strong wine with you. Xiao Feng's words scared Song Qingshu so much that he broke out in a cold sweat. Drinking 1,000 cups, wouldn't his stomach explode? Big Brother Song, when I return, Nancian will definitely practice my sword skills. The next time we meet, I hope Big Brother will give me some pointers. After Xiao Feng left, Yalu Nancian came in front of Song Qingshu, and after a while, she said a strange sentence. Looking at the usually calm and collected Yalu Nancian's face showing a trace of bashfulness, Song Qingshu couldn't help but be overjoyed. Could it be that this little girl is interested in me? I can't do anything about her charm. Song Qingshu thought for a moment, then took out a sword manual and secretly gave it to Yalu Nancian. These are some sword skills that I recorded in my spare time. Take it back and look through it. Perhaps it will be of help to your son and moon sword play. But after you're done, you have to return it to me. Yalu Nancian was shocked. She didn't expect him to give her such a precious thing. Hesitating for a moment, In the end, she couldn't resist the temptation of the sword technique. Seeing that no one was paying attention, she quickly and carefully hid the sword manual in her robe. Thank you, Big Brother Song. Nancian will definitely treat this like a treasure and won't leak a single bit of it. Finished speaking, she quickly chased after Xiao Feng and Yelu Qi. Seeing her serious expression, Song Qingshu couldn't help but find it funny. He didn't have any good intentions when he borrowed the book. In his era, borrowing and returning books was the best way to improve the relationship between a man and a woman. Brother Song, if you ever come to our Red Coat Army as a guest, I will definitely use the strongest wine, the best beef, to entertain you. Hearing Yang Miaozhen list out a bunch of tempting conditions, Song Qingshu couldn't help but be disappointed. There's no such thing as the most beautiful person. In the entire Red Coat Army, I'm afraid the most beautiful person is me. If Brother Song doesn't mind, then I can accompany you. Yang Miaozhen had lived in the wilderness of Jianghu and was used to all kinds of teasing. Leaving behind a carefree and unrestrained figure, she made Song Qingshu blush. Before Zhang Songshi and Yin Lighting left, Zhang Songshi pulled Song Qingshu aside and said, Qingshu, when you have time, you should make a trip back to Wudang. Eldest apprentice brother has been thinking about you, and your great teacher must have many things to say to you. Hearing the news about his cheap father, Song Qingshu felt a headache coming on. Embarrassed, he said, I'm afraid I won't be able to make time for a while. Once I have time, I will find some time to go back to Wudang. Everyone left one after another, leaving only Huang Rong. Song Qingshu originally thought that she had come to say goodbye, but who knew that she would open her mouth and say, I'm not as busy as the others, and I'm in a hurry to go back and take care of some things. I would like to stay for a few days. Would you like to see me? Song Qingshu was immediately overjoyed. That's exactly what I wanted. End of this chapter. Chapter 5:27. Seeing Song Qingshu's anxious expression, Huang Rong couldn't help but spit. Why are you so excited? Song Qingshu was momentarily at a loss for words. He couldn't possibly say that he liked spending time with a beauty like her, right? Huang Rong's expression turned solemn. Prince Song, I'll say this first. I'm staying this time to learn young master's military tactics so that I can use them in Xianyang City in the future. Please don't think too much about it. With that, she left, leaving Song Qingshu stunned on the spot. What do you mean don't think too much about it? You're the one who's thinking too much. Song Qingshu couldn't help but curse inwardly. She's already gone, and you still can't bear to part with her? Zhou Zhua's sour voice quickly rang in his ear. Turning around, he found that the girls were all sizing him up with a faint smile. Song Qingshu laughed awkwardly. How can I not bear to part with her? I'm just thinking about a problem. I'm afraid you're thinking about which girl to make a move on first. Seeing Zhou Zhua's words, Ajio couldn't help but agree. Even though she was relatively magnanimous, she couldn't help but feel depressed when she saw Song Qingshu flirting with so many women. The most beautiful person in the entire Red Coat Army is Little Sister. If Brother Song doesn't mind, Little Sister will accompany you when the time comes. Ajio had imitated Yang Miaozhen's expression at the time to perfection. After he finished speaking, he couldn't help but spit. This woman really doesn't know shame. Yang Miaozhen was born in the underworld and was surrounded by vulgar men. A woman's modesty naturally can't compare to a noble like you, Ajio. Xia Qingqing, who had been silent all this time, saw that there were no outsiders present and began to tease Ajio. Good, Qingqing. You're using all sorts of methods to insult me. Ajio immediately reached out to touch Xia Qingqing's waist. Do you think I don't know your personality? I don't believe that you won't be jealous. Xia Qingqing sighed faintly. I'm not the same as you. You and him are husband and wife while I'm a pitiful widow. What right do I have to be jealous? Xia Qingqing's words made the three of them sweat. Seeing that she was using his identity as a joke, Song Qingshu wasn't shocked but was instead happy. He understood that she was finally walking out from the shadows of the past. A woman has to be beautiful and filial. I like beautiful widows the most. Come, give me a kiss, Song Qingshu said as he hugged her. in front of the other girls. How could Xia Qingqing dare to let him kiss her like this? She swung her waist and nimbly dodged away. With a red face, she spat, "Pervert. This husband of ours is really worthy of the word pervert. Not only does he like to hook up with little girls and widows, he also likes to hook up with married women." A Jewess words immediately received the approval of the other two women. Our husband is worthy of the word pervert. Not only does he like to hook up with young girls and widows, he also likes to hook up with married women. Agio's words were immediately approved by the other two women. That reminds me, I can't figure out why you told them the secret of call the wind and summon the rain, Zhou said angrily. That's right. If it was done well, he could have gained many followers in a short time. Agio couldn't help but pout. He clearly didn't agree with Song Qingshu's methods, who told him to be soft-hearted. After being provoked by a beautiful girl, he spilled everything, Xia Qingqing added faintly. Indeed, it was not easy to enjoy the blessings of having multiple partners. Song Qingshu broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly explained, "You've really misunderstood me. There are pros and cons to using summoning the wind and summoning the rain to gather believers. Although it can gather the common people at the bottom of society, it will make the wise people of the world think that I'm a trickster. The losses outweigh the gains." Seeing that the three women were deep in thought, Song Qingshu continued, "Zhang Jiao was so powerful in the past. The Yellow Turban Army had millions, but in the eyes of the mainstream society, he was just a traitor who deceived the common people. I don't want to repeat the same mistake." Ajio nodded slightly. "That's right. We can't give up our future benefits for the sake of small benefits. However, big brother, your call the wind and summon the rain is truly 1 against 10,000. Is truly unprecedented. It would be a pity if you don't make use of it. Back then, Emperor Gaozu of Han killed the white snake, and Emperor Guangwu summoned the meteorite. There are too many examples to learn from. If big brother trusts me, leave this matter to me." Song Qingshu was overjoyed. "Agio, you come from the royal family and are very knowledgeable. There is no one better to leave this matter to you." On the side, Zhou Zhiruo's expression changed slightly. She quickly felt a strong sense of danger. Among the three women, Xia Qingqing could help him manage the Golden Snake Camp. Agio was even more noble and had the power to rally people before the Ming Dynasty. Although she was the leader of the Amei sect, her help to his great cause was limited. If this went on, her situation would be awkward. Zhou Zhiruo's expression suddenly changed. She already had an idea. She found an opportunity to say, "Qingshu, I plan to make a trip to Jiangnan soon." Song Qingshu looked at her in surprise. "What are you going to Jiangnan for?" "I want to go to the school of White Lotus to take a look." Zhou Zhiruo only answered briefly. She did not reveal too much about her plans. Although her father was the previous leader of the school of White Lotus, he was gone. She did not know how much she could do. Therefore, she was not willing to speak in detail in front of Xia Qingqing and Agio. She did not want to be laughed at by them in the future. Song Qingshu gave her a meaningful look. He had a clever and exquisite heart, so after thinking for a bit, he could guess Zhou Zhiruo's current mood pretty well. Although Zhou Zhiruo looked cold and harmless, she was very black-bellied on the inside. How could she be willing to let Ajiu steal her limelight? Seeing through Zhou Zhiruo's thoughts, not only did Song Qingshu not feel the slightest disgust, he even felt a trace of delight. If she didn't really care about me, why would she compare herself with a Jiu? All right, Song Qingshu nodded. However, you must be careful on this trip. Those people from the school of White Lotus are not good people. Zhou Zhiruo smiled brightly. Don't worry, they've won the title of #1 in the world. As long as I'm careful, the school of White Lotus can't do anything to me, even if they want to. Agio smiled. Sister, your grace in defeating all the heroes of the world at the lion-slaying gathering is something I yearn for. Zhou Zhiruo blushed. Sister, you're teasing me again. It was just a trick that time. Many true experts don't bother with juniors like me. Besides, with your martial arts, I'm afraid you're even better than me. Seeing the two girls flatter each other, Song Qingshu felt a headache coming on. He hurriedly interrupted and asked, Jiruo, when do you plan to leave? I won't be able to help you much even if I stay, so I plan to leave tomorrow morning. Zhou Jiruo's reply startled Song Qingshu. In such a hurry? You have two little sisters to keep you company. Are you afraid that no one will warm your bed? Zhou Jiruo couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Song Qingshu had never expected that she would say something so outrageous. He was immediately embarrassed, and Xia Qingqing and Ajio were also extremely bashful. Ajio and I have been very busy recently. We don't have time to keep him company. Xia Qingqing hurriedly clarified. However, there are more than one or two women waiting to warm his bed on this mountain. Song Qingshu felt guilty. Could there be an old flame on the mountain? Qingqing, are you talking about Miss Sung? Ajio asked in realization. Zhengro? Thinking of that cute round-faced girl, Song Qingshu felt a headache. Xia Qingqing faintly smiled. Someone has been evading before, saying that they will wait until the Qing army is defeated. Now that the Qing army has been defeated, if someone doesn't say something, I'm afraid the girl will be sad. Song Qingshu couldn't help but smile bitterly. How can I say something? I don't have any feelings for her. Wouldn't doing this harm her life? How about I go talk to Sita Boulay and recognize Zheng Ro as his sworn sister? Absolutely not, Ajio hurriedly said. Now that Big Brother's foundation is not stable, he needs someone who is absolutely loyal. Sita Boulay has been unreservedly supporting Big Brother all this time. Isn't it because of Miss Zheng that he treats Big Brother as family? What's more, Miss Zheng is deeply in love with Big Brother. If Big Brother rejects her now, wouldn't it disappoint the Wangwu faction? If there's a rift, it would be very bad. Yes, Miss Zheng must be taken in as a concubine. Although Zhou Zhuo was a little unhappy, she also knew the general situation. Moreover, she had seen Miss Zheng Ro before. She was as soft and cute as a little white rabbit and would not pose any threat to her. Of course, she didn't care too much. That's right, Miss Zheng is not only beautiful, but also knows martial arts. She's also a pure and clean virgin. It's good to marry her as a cultivation furnace. Xia Qingqing's identity was special, so she was always a little sensitive. She couldn't help but speak sourly. But as soon as the words came out, the hearts of the other women swayed at the same time. The scene of them healing Song Qingshu's injury was still vivid in their minds. Mary, Mary, Mary. You don't care. Why should I care? Anyway, I won't lose anything. Song Qingshu couldn't help but snort. His biggest dream was to have a big harem. But now he found that the feeling was really indescribable. Don't worry about Miss Zheng's matter. After all, wait until the Golden Snake Camp controls the prefectures. Xia Qingqing suddenly had a strange expression on her face. Right now, there's a girl waiting in the side hall to see you. Ooh, Song Qingshu was startled. Ajio and Zhou Zhuo couldn't help but pricked up their ears. Miss Fong of the Mu Palace. Xia Qingqing was also very depressed. If she had known that this person was so fickle, she wouldn't have been so soft-hearted in the beginning. Now, she was so easily hurt. Not to mention Xia Qingqing and Zhou Zhuo, even a graceful and magnanimous person like Ajio was a little jealous. Why do all the beautiful girls have an affair with you? After staying in the Golden Snake Camp for a long time, Ajio inadvertently learned some vulgar words. Not all. Maybe the Mu Palace has something to say to me. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly and hurried to the side hall, where Fong Yi was under the three women's contemptuous gazes. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.